Sounds nice.
Very nice.
Sounds very nice.
Very warm.
It does sound warm. What was I saying? I forgot. Okay. Yes, I think everything. Let me check this again. Yeah, it is warm. Yeah, but I do like environment stuff.
Okay.
But
Well,
it's kind of done right now.
thanks for the
Yes.
plastic water bottle then.
I
Environmental.
I saw, you could just,
Good enough.
toss it. We'll put that in the ocean later.
Yep.
But I learned in like class, like in high school, that plastic bottles aren't always better or not always worse than like the metallic bottles.
Really?
Because the going into making a metallic bottle
Yeah.
takes more like carbon emissions than
Yeah.
the plastic ones.
People don't always realize like it's reduce, reuse, then recycle.
Yeah.
Like because reducing your usage of anything is better than trying to reuse or recycle it. But all right, on the environmental topic, I was gonna ask you like, what's your diet like? You big?
My diet?
Yeah.
Okay. Recently, I know it's not great. I eat a lot of meat.
Same. Yeah.
I eat chicken.
Yeah. Same.
Just
I mean,
chicken.
chicken, eggs, dairy, which
Yeah.
are like, from what I've learned, some very, very big contributors to
Yeah.
like global warming and
Yeah.
emissions.
I mean, I know the cows
Yeah.
are like number one
Yeah.
for like their water intake and
Yeah.
for the methane they produce. But the chickens, yeah, I literally eat a chicken. I literally just had a chicken, egg, and mozzarella cheese for breakfast.
Exactly.
It was so good.
And it's so hard for us to like get away from that. But I don't know. I think in my head, I want to maybe in like 5 to 10 years start to get a less dairy and meat dependent diet.
Yeah, but it's just, I mean, there's really ethical reasons not to eat it because it's so
Yeah.
fucked up just having these cows and
Yeah.
chickens in little coops eating their own shit and piss
Yep.
and just killing them on command. And it's just not great for the environment. But it's so hard because
Yeah.
it tastes so good.
It is really good. And I think in America especially, like our meat consumption per capita is like absurd compared to the rest of the
Is
world. And there's some stats like if the entire world adopted the same dairy and meat consumption habits that Americans have, we would not be able to meet the world's food supply within like a month's time or
Oh,
something.
jeez.
Yeah.
My friend Hurley, he was telling me that we should like switch to insects.
Insects.
Like other parts of the country eat like insects as like a big part of their diet,
Yeah.
like in Asia, and we don't at all because it just I don't want
Right.
to eat like a
Yeah. A
worm.
bug. or a
Yeah, it's
worm,
gross, but that could be because I think it's less water to produce them.
Sure. Yeah. I believe it.
But I want to move to like lab grown.
Right. You ever had
Meats.
Beyond?
No,
Burger?
what is a Beyond Burger?
I mean, that's exactly what you just described. Like
Okay.
lab or plant-based meat. It's like I couldn't tell you the specifics, but made in a lab.
Yeah.
And they're getting pretty good at like the texture and the taste being very comparable to that of like a beef patty.
Yeah.
And they are probably the most like speculated on like plant-based food company right now. Like I think they IPO'd last year, and they just had a huge valuation, and they still do. So a lot of people think that industry will take off. Other things like alt milk, like soy milk, oat milk, dairy or almond milk, things like that. Yeah, a lot of speculation that people will try to trend towards that, which there's good reasons for it, both environmental and your own health. Like a lot of pro athletes choose plant-based diets and things like that. And I say all this as someone who eats a shit ton of meat, like so much meat and dairy.
It's so good. But the fact, I think, not even the plant-based, I feel as if the meats that are cellularly, that's how you say it, grown, like they take a cell from a cow
Right.
and duplicate it in some, I don't know the science behind it.
Yeah.
So it's literally meat, but they just take it, and they've done it before. It just costs thousands of dollars because it's not it's not Ford.
Right.
I'll use that as an adjective.
Yeah.
It's not mainline yet, so it costs so much money to do it. But I feel like you can't get your nutrients from just plants. Like, how are we supposed to get that much protein from anything else other than?
Well, I thought that too, and like, granted, I haven't done it myself, so I'm speaking from like Google searches and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that a good amount of the like reasoning behind why everyone thinks you can't get sufficient protein or vitamins from a plant-based or vegan diet is because in the United States, at least, we live in such a dairy and meat dependent society where it's just the barrier of entry to getting plant-based diet in general is impossible, or not impossible, but like way more difficult. Like, think about right now, just where we're sitting, how difficult would it be for you to get a full meal, including dairy and meat, versus a full meal, not including either any dairy or any meat?
It'd be
right?
much harder.
Yeah. And I thought about this for myself at school. I had like a meal plan, right? And it was like, I literally could not imagine a single meal that didn't have meat or dairy in it. And that's not to like, you know, disrespect my school's meal plan or
It's
anything.
every school.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like the country. So there are ways. Tofu, I'm trying to think of the other one. My girlfriend's been introducing me to all of them.
Yeah.
But they're not bad. And they do meet like similar, if not greater than the protein consumption that we need to, you know, keep doing what we do.
Yeah. So would your switch be because of like an ethical problem or more environmental?
I think it's also like it's better for you as well.
Okay.
There's a lot of like research that shows heart disease and stuff down the line correlated with heavy beef consumption and dairy and things like that. So, you know, there's no reason not to. I think other than right now the barrier of entry is insanely high, and for the most part, I'd imagine cost is probably still not equal. Like, you can get a double quarter pounder for what, $1?
So
maybe?
cheap.
Yeah.
I feel that comes with demand too.
Yeah.
Once people start shifting towards, because I think we're at the in between, like, it's there, but I'm not going to switch yet.
Yeah. And I think this is a good segue. It comes down to like a fairly priced market. So you ask, like, if you look at all the data that's like how bad beef and dairy is for the environment or whatever, whether you believe it or not, you might ask, like, well, how do they get away with producing it for so cheap? And it's impossible to expect consumers to switch to a more difficult product, right? Like, even if we bring out these plant-based meats and they're better for you and they're better for the environment, if they're not better tasting and more accessible, meaning like lower barrier of entry, cheaper price, you can't expect anyone to switch. And that won't, you know, until you get people to switch on will, you won't cause like a momentum switch in the country and in the world. And so usually markets just in general work out when they're fairly priced. And this is something that I've learned a lot more about in the past year, thinking about like carbon in general. The reason why, like, combustion vehicles are still the dominant choice for most people in the world is simply because of the cost aspect, right? Electric vehicles getting closer, but there's still a tremendous cost up front for, you know, the batteries and the construction of the cars as well. If the market was fairly priced, right, and I'm going to get to what I mean, it would be tremendously more expensive for people to drive, you know, internal combustion vehicles because of the emissions that they're producing. So if you were to put a tax on carbon, say, which is something plenty of countries have done, that would sway a ton more people to things like plant-based diets or electric vehicles or solar panels on their house, stuff like that. But it's not something that's like, oh, let's just flip the switch and then we're there, because a carbon tax in like a switch on in one day would probably have some catastrophic things, you know.
Yeah. So how would you make that switch if you don't have the people behind you? Like, how do you get to the point where you can bring the prices down and make it good enough when you don't have people buying your stuff? Like, that seems difficult.
Well, bringing the prices down is like you can tackle the problem from both sides, right? Obviously, you want to try to make the best electric cars as cheap as you can. And at the same time, though, you can also ask for like fair market pricing, because when you buy an electric car, you're not putting anything into the atmosphere, whereas someone buying like an internal combustion car has 10 to 15 years of emissions that they're effectively not getting charged for, right? Mm-hmm. They pay for the gas, but there's no taxation on the, you know, damage done to the atmosphere or anything like that. And that's something that I think we'll start to see factored into the pricing in fuels and energy and vehicles all in general. So not just bringing down the cost of electric vehicles, but more fairly pricing the cost of carbon and emissions in general.
That makes
probably
sense.
Level that playing field.
Yeah, so bring up the prices of combustion fuel or combustion vehicles compared to the electric.
Yeah.
But what about, so I have a few questions about electric cars. Isn't the batteries put a lot of emissions in too, like what they're made out of?
Yeah.
And where is this like electricity coming from? Because doesn't it
Yeah.
still take like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you charge it at your house, there's an incredibly low chance that your house is run on renewable energy.
Yeah.
Right? So for most people, if you're trying to do the most environmentally conscious thing, number one, don't buy a car. Most people don't need a car. And it's better for you too. Like, cars are expensive, cars are dangerous, cars are a pain in the ass. You got to park them, clean them, maintain them. If you get in an accident, it's a shit show.
You got to get insurance.
Yeah, it's insurance. So number one, don't get a car if you don't need it. And for those who do, there's plenty of other options that are way better for the environment. If you were to Uber every time you needed a ride desperately, depending on the car you were considering getting, I'd argue most Americans would probably be saving money if they were just Ubering. And I mean, it really depends where you live, right?
Yeah.
But so that's like number one, don't buy a car. Number two, if you really need it, the best thing you can buy is a car that's already built, right? There's no need for them to spin up production just for your desire to have that brand new car. So a used car is always going to be better than any brand new electric or brand new hybrid or brand new internal combustion. And then if all that fails and you really feel like you need that brand new car, well, then the question becomes, do I need an internal combustion or a battery? And off the factory line, that ICE car, ICE, internal combustion engine, that car is definitely right there. And at that point in both those cars' lives, this car has probably had a lower carbon footprint than the electric car. The difference is this car you're filling up once a week with, gasoline for the rest of its life. And the electric car more or less will have a battery to last you between, right now, the batteries in Teslas are rated for 300,000 miles. They're touting a new 1,000,000-mile battery, which which would be a much better lifespan for the car. So that's like a big roundabout way of saying, batteries are not great for the planet. But, and then your question about like charging, right? When you plug in your car at home, chances are it's probably not clean energy. That's still a problem like that, the world has to tackle, but it's a lot easier to tackle an infrastructure problem than it is to somehow make up for the billions of tons of carbon, put out by the transportation industry every year, right?
Yeah.
So things like solar and battery storage makes our grid cleaner, whether you have it on your house or not. Something that power providers have to do that I don't think a lot of people realize is what the job of for us it's PSE&G, right? They have two sort of like business constituents. It's their customers, people like us who use the power to charge our phones and power our homes. And then they have their providers, which are these massive power plants. Some of them are coal. In America, it's probably mostly coal. There's nuclear plants, which are, better for the environment. And then there's a couple other types of power plants, right? On the one hand, these power plants have it's like a minimum threshold that like the lowest amount of power they can produce. So a nuclear plant, it's almost impossible to totally shut off a nuclear plant, and it's incredibly expensive if you do it. But then they can ramp up power production sort of on demand. So for example, like PSE&G knows, as people start to wake up in the morning, they expect the total grid demand to go up. So they're going to tell their providers like, hey, we're going to need more power at this time. And they can ramp power production. What they can't do is when there's no need for power, turn down those utilities below a certain level. Like there's a minimum amount that they're always producing. Mm-hmm. And if there's not the demand, that power goes to waste. If not, it just puts the grid in danger. Like there's more power running through those lines than they're really rated for. So battery storage is like a way more valuable thing than people realize, because if you think about like having these massive battery farms at, the power grids or at a nuclear power plant, that gives a huge buffer between the demand fluctuating and their ability to scale production. So if midday there was an incredible drop in demand, and they had all this power coming out of the nuclear power plant. Other way around. If there was an incredible spike in demand and they weren't able to ramp up production just as quickly, instead of brownouts or blackouts like we see in Texas and California, the batteries provide a buffer where we pull out of the batteries until our power producing utilities can match that demand. So that's a roundabout way of saying, like, it's easier to tackle the problem when the power we're using to get around comes from a grid, I guess, rather than from the ground.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the batteries are just like storage devices where they can pull from.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. I didn't know that they like ramped up and ramped down.
It's a big like economy. So here's something that one of the biggest parts of Tesla's business that a lot of people don't think about or know about is something called the auto bidder. So if you go out right now, you can buy a Tesla Powerwall for your house, and it's a battery that would, feasibly, the common use case would be, if the grid goes out, I have a battery to power my house for 2-3 days. Or if you have solar, you could live entirely off the grid, right? Your solar panels charge batteries during the day, and then they power your house at night. So that's the common use case for these power walls. The lesser known use case is using this software Tesla writes. Basically, the power company, just like we just talked about, has this balance between demand and production that they're constantly trying to meet and keep in check. And they can use any kind of batteries to help them in that battle, right? So at certain points in the day, the power company is willing to pay a lot more for power. And if you're a consumer who has a big battery in their house, you can sell that to the power company, like your power in real time, and they will pay you for it. And then at other points in the day, the power is not worth as much. So they're like, we're not going to pay you as much. Tesla has software, and it's nothing crazy. It's similar to what you'd see in the stock market, like algorithmic trading, where your battery pack is aware of how much the power company is paying at that time and can say, all right, I'm going to sell you the power I've stored right now. Overnight, it's probably not worth as much, so I'm just going to retain it for my owner. And then once the value goes back up, we'll start selling back to the grid. And in that way, buying batteries for your house not only puts you at more independence from the grid, but can eventually earn you some passive income off of selling your power back to the grid.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal.
Yeah,
How is the storage work of a battery? Because like our batteries run out. Isn't they're not efficient? Do you have to like replace them at a certain point?
Yeah, it's very similar to what's in your phone right now. They're still lithium based for the most part. Tesla's working on some nickel based batteries that I think are in production in China, but they're really not scalable yet. Batteries are not great though, is the bottom line. They lose their maximum potential storage capacity over time, the more times you recharge and discharge them. And eventually, just like on your phone, that 100% will not be the same 100% as the first day you got the car or the first day you got the battery pack. So yeah, batteries have a lifespan to them, but the good thing is, like in a car, right? If you have an internal combustion car and I don't know, like the transmission dies, you can replace the transmission, but then you expect like maybe the alternator will die and you can replace that. Then the engine might die, you replace that. It's basically replacing the entire car. Whereas something like an electric car, the most likely candidate for equipment failure is probably the battery. And if you believe in what Tesla's trying to do, which is extend that lifespan of the battery to 1 million plus miles, a perfect world, you drive your Tesla for 1 million miles, battery is no longer at that like acceptable range level. It's maybe like 50% of what it was on the very first day after 1 million miles. Then you can buy a new battery for $10,000 to $15,000, and you've effectively got yourself a new car, right?
Yeah. How does a battery work?
Oh God.
Do you understand that? Or could you give me a dummy version, maybe?
Probably not as well as I should. I'm a computer science guy, so we stick with like the software side of things.
Yeah.
And, all right. So it's all just electrons, I think, right? And oh man, I'm really gonna mess this up.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm probably not the best to describe. It's basically just like storing electrons and then when there's like a need for power, right? The electrons are going to go where there's not current. So that would be like, a drive motor in a car, and that's how you can make the car go. I can't really give you more of a detailed explanation than that.
Electrons and electricity confuses the shit out of me. I don't really get how that stuff works. But for renewable energy sources, what do you think is the best kind? Because I know like solar panels only can accept like 33% of point something of the light it brings in, and they say that's max. But I call bullshit on that. There's no way it's max for now.
Who knows, right?
But what do you think the best way is for us to go?
I mean, I don't think we should be choosing. I think you got to throw the kitchen sink at the problem. There's currently $100 million X Prize competition funded by Elon Musk for student or professional teams who can tackle the problem of carbon sequestration or carbon capture, basically like taking carbon out of the atmosphere and storing it somewhere in the earth where it's not doing damage to the atmosphere.
Can you just like, instead of storing it somewhere, just reuse it in another sense, like maybe combine it with, I don't know what else uses carbon like that we need?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can. I think it's just a scale issue. Like I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's like enough. I'm not sure there's enough demand for whatever you're making. Yeah.
Give us some carbon to H2O would be electric.
Well, I don't think that would work.
It doesn't make sense.
Maybe.
Because there is a lot of. Do you think there would be any repercussions from taking all this carbon out of the environment? Because it seems like the world kind of has a balance of sorts. Like you lean it in one direction, it's gonna find a way to balance out. And by us trying to like take shit off the scale.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's not as scary as you might think. Like it's basically just scaling up trees, right? If we could plant 1 billion trees, that would probably do the same as what the goal of this X Prize competition would be. Trees essentially, like through photosynthesis, are taking carbon out of the atmosphere and storing it in these, right? Like it's a tree. That's where it is. And it's a better, that's exactly what trees do.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to scale up trees essentially, and put the carbon in a safer place than it is, just floating free in the atmosphere.
Are there any ideas right now of how to do it?
I mean, there certainly are. They're probably guarded by about $100 million worth of,
Yeah. That is true. That is a lot of money.
Yeah, but carbon capture's interesting, but like I said, I don't think any one solution, is enough. If everyone had solar panels on their roof, it'd be over. But you can't expect everyone to have solar panels on their roof.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everyone, and they're expensive. And like you said, they're not as efficient as people might hope. Batteries are pretty awesome, just in general. They can help grid providers, depend more on clean energy than like the fossil fuels by having that buffer. So batteries are great, carbon capture is great, nuclear power is great, and I don't think it's any one answer.
That's good. It kind of reminds me of what my friend, I don't know if you know Alex D'Alessandro, was telling me. He's going in this crypto chain, but I'm like, which like currency is going to be the currency? He's like, no. It's not one. They're going to be like a community of them that work together. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like an ecosystem of crypto, but I still don't really understand crypto at all.
Oh man,
do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit.
I feel like, does anyone understand crypto?
Right,
like all together.
So
it makes no sense to me.
Man, how do I even want to start this conversation? I talk about like crypto and just blockchain in general quite a lot with friends at school, my brother, colleagues. Like to start off, right? Most people refer to like crypto and they know Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum, and probably Dogecoin because of the memes. Bitcoin has some legitimate reasons for its notoriety, being the first like public use of blockchain, right? And so blockchain is the technology that powers all of these cryptocurrencies. And there's this joke in computer science that like blockchains are just overhyped linked lists. And linked lists is something that's been around in computer science for decades. Basically what a blockchain is this abstract way of organizing data, right? So you can go on your computer and you can make a spreadsheet and put in like hundreds of lines of whatever you want. You could put names of people, you could put dollar amounts. And maybe if you're writing a budget, you know, you'd have all your different transactions. Like I spent $5 on gummy bears on this day, and you'd have hundreds of lines of that.
Like a sheets?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. That's like a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like one way of storing data. The problem with that, right? If you make that spreadsheet, it's on your computer, and, you know, more or less you trust that computer to retain that copy, and you have to trust that that computer is not going to alter it or, you know, fraudulent you, like put incorrect values where you don't want them to be. And, you know, as I'm saying this, you might be like, all right, well, I trust my computer. It's not going to do that. And it won't. But
Thank you, computer.
the issue comes up when you like scale that, right? So now we live in a world with billions of people and billions of dollars getting transacted every day. And like for us, right, we trust our banks to keep track of every dollar we spend on our debit cards, or, you know, the credit unions on our credit cards. And they do a pretty good job of it, right? It's pretty infrequent that you go on there and there's inaccurate charges, or if there is, they'll resolve it pretty quickly. But there's still like a level of trust in them maintaining that list. And what blockchain does is it decentralizes the data, right? All of these words are incredibly like buzzword heavy. So I hate saying them because they're so like cringy in my mind. Any like startup company just throws blockchain, decentralized, DeFi, AI, and they just get hundreds of millions of dollars thrown their way.
Because no one understands it. They see those like, oh, I heard that before.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
very guilty of it.
So what decentralized means, right, is to take away control from any one central authority. So there's no, like with your bank, that data that's like, you know, James's transaction history, all those gummy bears you buy, that data is stored in that bank's, you know, like data center. And they're the ones like responsible for it. They own the data. If they wanted to, they could change it. They could delete it.
Or sell it.
Yeah, or sell it.
Like Facebook's
yes, exactly. And that's a big like, you know, plus on the blockchain side of things. Blockchain, it basically relies on the network of people that use it to maintain this database. So to give an example, like if I send you $5 in Bitcoin, right? I have to basically take this transaction which says like Kyle Papili is sending James Cunningham $5, and I kind of pose this to the network. And like that sounds a little weird, but like the entire planet can see that transaction. Well, they can see my wallet ID,
Like your fingerprint.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. They see this string of numbers sent that string of numbers, this amount of money, and all of these people in the world basically have to do math that proves that this is a legitimate transaction.
How do they do that math?
All right, so this is where it gets a little technical, but have you ever done any kind of coding, even the most basic? Nothing. Okay, that's fine. So here's like in coding, right? You can something called a string, right? Is literally just a string of letters. All it is like a word or a sentence. If I write like a string that says like "Hello World," the value you see is like HELLO space world. But you can also do something which is like a hash value of that. And there's tons of different hashing algorithms, but it takes any like set of data, like hello world, and makes it into a very long, complicated like series of numbers and letters. So you can take a string, hash it, and get out these like numbers and letters, but you can't go backwards. Like I can't take these numbers and letters and go backwards to that string. What they do, right, is one transaction on the chain. It's got, you know, from Kyle to James, amount $5. And then they take all of that data and they hash it. So they get this random string of number. Oh, sorry. And then it also has in that block, it's got a hash for the transaction that happened right before it. So like if right before we did that, your mom sent me $5 for nefarious reasons, that transaction would be right before us in the chain. And so this transaction's got James's mom sends Kyle this amount, and it has the hash for the previous transaction in front of it. So when we're adding ours to the chain, right, we make a hash out of this, like a long string of numbers and letters, and it has to correctly match the hash on the previous one. So
it's like one long line that keeps getting added to?
Yes.
Okay.
And the way that they know it's legitimate is there's no way for me to like reverse the math that's been done on this one to figure out what would be the next hash, kind of.
Okay.
And like that's a really oversimplified way of it, but scale that up to billions of transactions, and it's a ton of math. And it's not like feasibly you could do it with your hand, but it's math that's done better by silicon-based processors, things that we have in our computers. So that's where like mining comes in. All these people, they're basically devoting their silicon resources, which is like your processor in your computer, to doing the math that keeps this blockchain alive, the math that like allows that transaction to get added legitimately and prevents anyone from trying to add a random transaction. That math is what keeps the blockchain alive. It's what keeps Bitcoin transactions working. And as a reward for that, the network was designed to issue new coins to those miners that successfully keep the network working. So it started out like basically they keep increasing the difficulty of mining in proportion to the scale of the network. So like back in 2011 when Bitcoin was brand new, you could probably turn on that laptop and mine a Bitcoin in like a day. Nowadays, to mine a single Bitcoin takes data centers worth of computers, which is why most people really mine in these giant pools where they have hundreds of thousands of people working together with their computers. And if that pool gets awarded it's not exactly one Bitcoin. I think right now it's 6.25, and that number keeps changing. It gets cut in half every so many years. The pool divides that up amongst everyone who's been helping. So that's how mining works. And
so it's just their computers.
Yep.
Like what are they just like turn on their computer and it's just keeping everything together?
Yeah. So the computer is downloading from this distributed network. There's no one data center. It's downloading the latest block that's trying to get added to the chain. And your computer is trying to calculate that hash of the previous transaction. And so are thousands of computers. Like they're all trying to calculate.
How do they separate it up? Like how do they know if this computer is doing this hash? How do I know another computer and...
Yeah, I mean, so they all are kind of working on the exact same one at the same time. So one block is not just a single transaction. It's, I don't know the number. It's a lot. Like they pack a ton into one block, and hundreds of thousands of computers are working on it at the same time, and they kind of distribute the workload. So they'll just send your
work
computer
together.
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
Fucking.
I mean, it's a little scary, but it's when you realize like what they're doing. It's just a ton of kind of guess and check, right?
Okay.
Like it's like tons of linear algebra and just your computer doing really basic computations that they then pool together with the solutions of hundreds of other computers. Eventually they get that correct hash and that block gets added and then the next one comes in.
So why can we trust like computers to do that, but not like our banking?
Well,
stuff?
that's a really good question. The trust comes in that there's hundreds of thousands of computers doing it, and because of that, if like for example, like if one nefarious actor wrote a program that was like submitting, I guess like incorrect answers, we could say, to the blockchain, like, oh, you know what, this transaction is legitimate. James sent me $1 million, and I've got the math to prove it, and it's incorrect. There's hundreds of thousands of other computers, or what we call nodes, on the network that will say that's not right. And it takes 51% of people for 51% of nodes on the network to like legitimize a transaction. So that's something like one of the only real risks with decentralized anything is something called like the 51% attack. And that's like if one person got control over 51% of the nodes on the network, they'd be able to do whatever they want, right? Then it basically becomes a centralized data center
because then someone has mostly control.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So if there's no control, it's decentralized or whatever this buzz word is.
Yeah.
So where does all this stuff get stored? Is it just based out of all of our computers?
Yeah, in a way it is. So the blockchain, you can literally go online and download the entire blockchain. I think right now it's around like 40 gigabytes or something. It's not that crazy big.
It's smaller than Modern Warfare.
I might be wrong. You might want to Google it. But you could literally read through every single transaction in the history of Bitcoin. And that data, like you just said, is stored a little bit on this computer, a little bit on that one. And there's no, well, there are like single places that hold the entire thing, but there's not like one source that we all depend on as like the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is responsible for maintaining it.
I kind of like that. And it takes a lot of power away from the banks,
Yeah.
which is huge because they can just be scumbags and do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But for something like Polygon, because do you know, have you heard about Polygon?
I don't think so.
It's another
Crypto.
coin
Okay.
that has, it's like, there's this set amount of Polygon and there's not
Okay.
going to be any added.
Yeah.
So how would something like that work with a mining based reward system?
Yeah. So what I just described is basically just Bitcoin, right?
Okay.
So that's how Bitcoin works.
And that's why it uses so much energy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why people are like, eh.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of miners, they use a ton of energy. Anyway, there's better ways of doing this process, and we're learning about it, right? Like this was a brand new field in 2011 when Bitcoin came to be,
Which is fucking crazy.
which is crazy. And we are slowly, collectively learning, how the best ways to manage this blockchain is, because it's expensive to do transactions in Bitcoin right now. And especially like Ethereum is probably a better example. Ethereum is like a little more polished version of Bitcoin. They thought through and they continue to think through better ways of doing this transaction processing. Right now, as it is, Ethereum is very similar to how Bitcoin operates. Like you still mine Ethereum and they still validate transactions. They're currently in the process of moving to something called proof of stake. So the mining thing we just described, that's called proof of work, which is like you do the work on your laptop and that proves that this is a legitimate transaction. Ethereum is in the middle of this major transition of the entire currency to something called proof of stake, where instead of like doing a ton of work on your laptops, you actually have people called validators who can stake their Ethereum. And I'll say right now it takes 32 Ethereum, which I think today is probably $90,000, something a little more than that. Yeah. You stake that money on the blockchain and you basically say like you relinquish your rights to touch it, right? So I put 90 grand on the blockchain and I say like, I can't touch this for the next so many years. And that currency, this is even more complicated. I don't think I could explain how it works. It does a similar job to what your computer did in validating the transactions, but instead of like giving up your computational resources, you give up your monetary resources, and that in essence replaces mining. And in reward, in exchange for me putting out my currency to keep the network working, I'll get paid various rates like 6 to 10 to 20% annually for being a validator. So they're getting better.
Yeah, my friend, because you can take out like a loan from that too, right?
Yeah.
Because my
You can do
friend
the
really just
opposite.
took out a loan and invested
wow.
in it. I'm like, damn. So what is there even I don't know, geez, all this stuff is so much.
Yeah,
Is there even a way for, because I'm like, how, like, do you have to pay that money back that you just took out?
So what your friend probably did, I'm going to guess he went to a number of exchanges like Coinbase or BlockFi or Binance and is trading on margin. Or you can also get legitimate loans. So he might have done that, right? So they'll say like, all right, if you give us X number in US dollars as like collateral, we'll pay you this amount of Ethereum. And if you think Ethereum is going to go up, you could make all your money back, right? Because that amount in US dollars or that amount in Ethereum will be worth way more than whatever you gave in collateral. So that's just like people building on top of these, like people like Coinbase are kind of building institutions around blockchain, which is not inherently bad. So like it gets a little confusing because Coinbase, I'm just going to use them as like the gold standard for like an exchange. They make it so easy or relatively easy for people to buy Bitcoin, sell Bitcoin, and send Bitcoin. But they kind of somewhat defeat the purpose, right? Because now when I make a Coinbase account, that is stored on Coinbase's, right? Like now it's centralized again. And Coinbase actually owns my wallet, like my Bitcoin wallet. They have to, in order to actually operate their system, they have to like keep a copy of my wallet ID and my private key. So these are things that kind of get abstracted away from people. When you buy on Coinbase, what's actually happening is they're creating a brand new wallet for you on the blockchain, which you could have done by yourself. And that's just like a random string of numbers that really means James. And then they also create a private key for you, which you also could have done by yourself. And that's a really big random string of numbers that only you should ever have. But it's kind of funny, on Coinbase, you never get that private key. They keep it. And when you buy Bitcoin, right, they use those two to actually buy you the Bitcoin. And then when you sell it, they use those two to send it somewhere else. You could, like, the really, I guess, tinfoil hat way to use Bitcoin would be making your own wallet.
How do you do that?
So this is the crazy part, right? You can make, it's not even like you make a wallet. You just have to send the money to an address that someone else doesn't. That you just have to send the money to an address that you have the private key for. And there's plenty of ways to generate the private key. Like, it really is just math. I know this is like, I'm trying to confuse you or anything. It's just like, there's like an equation that says, like, for this private key, it's correlated to this wallet address, right? And it's not math that you can crack. There's like, just to talk about for a second, the level of security in this, the private keys that they use are SHA 256-bit encryption, whatever that means, right? But just to give you some scale, this is something I've heard offline, so like fact check me if you will, everyone. The smallest known unit of energy in the universe is, I think it's called like a Planck or something like that. If you could somehow make a way to use just one of the smallest known units of energy in the world to try a combination of strings and see if that's the correct key for a given wallet, if there was a way to make like the world's most efficient computer to do that, and you get one attempt per smallest unit of energy, it would take more energy than is in the known universe to crack just a single wallet.
That's a cure.
Yeah. And then people will come at you and say like, well, quantum computers can do that. And they can't, but even if they could, you can always update that level of encryption.
Yeah, you just keep getting better.
Yeah. So,
jeez.
Sorry.
No, but like, I think Coinbase is capitalizing on the fact that no one understand, like the normal person does not understand this stuff. So it's so easy for me or my mom to go on and be like, hey, I want to buy some Ethereum so I could pay Kyle for that good time last night. But because I like, and probably a lot of people do not know how to buy my own coin or get my pass key. Yeah. So what would you recommend for a dum-dum like me to go in and figure this stuff out for my own?
I would still recommend Coinbase. Not all centralization's bad, right? So you do run a very, very small risk when you buy with Coinbase, because if Coinbase, the company, has financial troubles, they're the ones in charge of all your Bitcoin. And, you know, they might, like a bank does, they might lend out more than they actually have. And then your Bitcoin's gone. And it's Coinbase's fault, right? It's not the blockchain's fault. The blockchain doesn't do anything that you don't tell it to.
Yeah.
If you really want to be safe, right, you can buy on basically, unless you like literally find a person that will trade for US dollars to Bitcoin, you almost always have to use an exchange to buy any crypto. So I would recommend, for someone really skeptical, go ahead, buy on Coinbase, and you'll be fine. Like, pay the small fee. And then if you're really skeptical, you can make a private key like on a flash drive, or even crazier, you can write it on a piece of paper. Like, you'd go online, just Google how to make a Bitcoin wallet and a private key, and then you can write those pieces of information on that paper. And as long as you don't show anyone that paper, you can go in Coinbase, send the money you bought on Coinbase to that wallet, and then just like hide that paper in your pocket for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And it will not go anywhere ever.
That is kind of nice.
There. Yeah.
So what is the so because Bitcoin, we were saying before, has like a big environmental impact. Is Ethereum and these other not stake based? Yeah. Do they still have the same?
Yeah. So proof of stake is millions of times better than proof of work from an environmental impact. And people are wondering, like, will Bitcoin ever, it's called forking when you do a big change like that. Will Bitcoin ever fork to proof of stake? I don't know.
Seems like they should.
Yeah. And by the way, when we say, like, will Bitcoin, like, who's Bitcoin?
Yeah. Didn't the guy like disappear?
So, all right, let's do that story real quick. The way it was started, I think it was like 2009 or 10. And there is this name, Satoshi Nakamoto, right? That is associated with the origins of Bitcoin. And nobody knows whether it's a single person or a group of people. There are like real living people who were in communication with quote unquote Satoshi Nakamoto on like an online forum. And this process is not uncommon to the open source world, where if I, like, as a computer science student, go on like GitHub is a big website where you store code, I could make a repository, a big folder basically, and start a project there. And if it's cool enough, people will find it and they'll contribute. Like someone, like another smart guy in China might be like, oh, you know what, this is an interesting project, I'm going to add a little bit here. And they'll kind of like ask me, like, can I add this to your project? And
That's
I'll
so
say,
cool.
Yeah. Open source and like big programming projects are awesome. And that's kind of how like Bitcoin started, like an open source project like that, where people were like, you know what, this Satoshi guy is like doing something interesting, let's contribute. And however, you know, many people were contributing in the beginning, a lot of them are still very like alive and well, but nobody really knows who the main contributor was. It was just like a screen name. And that is the origin of Bitcoin. Fast forward to today, there's plenty of developers, like they're called like Bitcoin devs, who make small changes to like the blockchain and how it works. But it's not like these people have some greater level of control over the blockchain than anyone else. They still need like 51% of consensus to make any change to how Bitcoin works. And a little example is a couple years ago, if you're like paying attention on Coinbase, you'll notice there's Bitcoin and there's Bitcoin Cash. That is the result of a fork a few years ago, where a lot of the developers said, you know, this original Bitcoin blockchain is not great. It's not like really scalable. So we're going to fork and we're going to make something called Bitcoin Cash. And there's a few differences that I won't go into, but it's a little bit like better for quicker transactions. They basically split the blockchain in half, right? So you could either have elected to keep your Bitcoin in original Bitcoin or fork to Bitcoin Cash. And now they're totally separate things because the network was sort of split on that decision. That's kind of who's developing these things. Yeah.
So the people that are like running Bitcoin don't have like a stake in it. Like they probably have some coins. But they're just like the maintenance people that make sure it's working and improving. Do they get paid for this? Or
so different coins handle this differently. I don't think Bitcoin, I don't think there's any built-in developer compensation into Bitcoin. Ethereum, I don't think so has it either. Certain coins literally do have written in their blockchains, like developer contributions get compensated. But for the most part, it's like enough people get together and work on this open source project, make the contribution, make the change, and money just sort of comes to them in the process through, like for Ethereum, they have a very well-known founder. His name's Vitalik, I think, or something like that. He's a very scrawny, funny-looking dude, but he's like goes on news shows all the time. He's from Sweden, I think, or maybe Norway. So he probably, I'm sure like Ethereum developers do get compensated in one way or another.
Yeah. So what do you think's the future of all this? Like, where is this headed?
Yeah. Well, that is the...
I mean, your guess, because I feel like it's impossible to know.
That's the $15 trillion question, right? I wish I knew. So I think the best thing for most people to do is consider like what investing advice has told us since the beginning of investing. And for most like adults, they're probably most familiar with like Warren Buffett's advice, which is always diversify, diversify, diversify. If you look at like Berkshire Hathaway, which is Warren Buffett's mega conglomerate company that has just been this monstrous of investing like genius, right? They don't do anything crazy. It's not like Warren Buffett is sitting there behind $20 trillion and saying like, let's go all in on Tesla today. Like, no, they're not doing anything absurd. If you look, and it's a publicly traded company, you can look at every asset they own, Berkshire Hathaway. It's very well diversified between, you know, stocks and bonds, and very small percentage bonds because they're not super growth heavy. And then there's like US stocks, international stocks. They got all the different sectors, food, technology, agriculture, all that. Diversification is no secret, like a very safe and sound way to invest. And that doesn't change at all when it comes to cryptocurrency, which is why I'd never suggest for anyone to go all in on any one crypto, or let alone, or even don't even go all in on crypto in general. Like, you know, someone who's very bullish on cryptocurrency, meaning like, I think there's a huge future in cryptocurrency in general. I still at this point, you know, keep a vast majority of like my personal holdings in US stocks, international stocks, real estate indexes. And then, you know, I have a probably greater than most percentage allocated to crypto, but it's small relative. And I would suggest, you know, anyone wanting to get into investing in crypto, look at your entire portfolio right now. Like if you're young, this is now like transitioning to just a general investment advice.
But we're not giving actual advice.
Oh.
This is, we don't give advice on this show.
Yeah, no,
We're
definitely
just
not.
We're just hypotheticals,
Right.
entertainment.
Exactly.
Yes.
I did a paid, segue. I did like a paid seminar this year for investment advice. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty sick.
Pretty cool.
That is really cool.
But we had to do that whole, like, that was.
We're
like,
not giving you advice.
Yeah. We had to get like an actual legal thing for them to sign.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Legal stuff.
Yeah. So, okay. If you're young, like probably our age, if you're in your 20s or even younger, you have like a ton of advantages on your side. You have time and you have the ability to take risk, right? And those are two really powerful tools.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. Hell yeah. And like risk is freaking awesome, right? Especially when you're young. If you invested like everything that you have into one thing and it went to shit, like you lost it all, that would suck. But you'd be okay probably for most people.
Yeah.
You have plenty of time to build back. It's not like you got, you know, kids and food that needs to be like put on a table for kids. It's not like you have a family relying on you right now in life. So yes, now is a really good time to take bigger risks than otherwise. But this is where like most people end the conversation. Most people don't realize like an equally giant advantage that we have is time. And like the power of compounding growth is so lost on everyone because just as humans, we think linearly. Like it's easy for us to plot a linear growth on a graph and expect like, all right, if we're going up, whatever, $4 every year, in 4 years, we'll have $16. But like exponential growth is something that our minds just don't really get. There's like one really quick example that
Penny.
Wait, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, would you rather like $10,000 right now or a penny that doubles every day for like a year or a month?
Yeah, it's probably
the month is still like it's millions of dollars.
Right. Here's another one. Like if you take a domino, like a normal sized domino piece, and then you know, the next one is twice as tall and twice as wide, and the next one's twice as tall, twice as wide. How many before you can knock over the Empire State Building?
I don't know. I'm going to say it's way less than I think.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's like in the teens or something.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Exponential growth is nuts.
Right. And so on an investing side of things, you have that risk advantage, but like probably your bigger advantage for most people is going to be the potential in exponential growth. So and what I would suggest to most people is like definitely take advantage of that risk thing because you're not going to get that back, right? Once you have rent and you've got bills to pay and you have like a family or kids to feed, you know, that risk, that ability to take risk is virtually gone. So it's okay to be a little more aggressive in investing when you're young and hungry, but also you're never going to get back that time. So the amount of money that you contribute to like a 401k or whatever investment vehicle you want to use, say you were contributing the exact same amount from today, like your 20th birthday until your 50th birthday, the amount of money you contribute between 20 and I think 28 will be equal to the amount that you contribute from 28 to 50.
Damn.
by the time you're 50. Yeah.
So it's invest young.
Yeah.
That's why.
And consistently.
Yeah. I got to start doing that more. I need to learn more.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the great thing about the internet is it's becoming so easy to learn about investing and crypto. Crypto is actually not easy to learn about yet.
It seems very confusing.
So the reason why from a computer, I just was yesterday talking to my brother about this. My brother is also a site reliability engineer. So computer shit, right? That's all you need to know.
Computer stuff.
Yeah. And we were talking about how it's actually pretty easy to learn almost anything in the programming world. Like if you want to learn how to write a program that does this, someone probably did exactly that, if not something really close that you can Google, find, copy, paste, and change. And that's freaking awesome. That's why like companies and startups can scale so quickly, is because programming is becoming a very Googleable skill. And it has been. Crypto, on the other hand, is not getting there at the same rate. And we were talking about like, why do you think there's not nearly as many like resources online, or even like at my school, right? I want to learn more about blockchain and things. And it's like, maybe there's one small elective class I could take on it. And I'm like, well, why? Is it just like it hasn't caught up yet? Maybe. But also think about for these giant tech companies like Google, Facebook, we'll talk about Facebook, but for them to like encourage their employees or their future employees, like the students in college, for them to encourage them to learn about blockchain and decentralized things is sort of like them betting on their own downfall. And why would they do that? Now there are ways that, you know, blockchain and Google, Facebook can happily coexist. But right now, you know, we're kind of seeing that like, the danger becomes like, if you can really scale blockchain and make it like a super efficient data center, because that's what it is. It's just a way of storing data and organizing. If you can do it really, really well, then you could make decentralized Facebook, right? So we could make Facebook.com that doesn't have a Mark Zuckerberg at the top. You could make... That
would be awesome.
Yeah. And when you post something, that post, you know, goes to the blockchain and it's stored totally decentralized. There's no company that gets to say, you know, we're going to, you know, sell this to advertisers.
Or censor it.
Yeah, or censor it. Even better. And, you know, if we want to get a little controversial right here, I think...
I'd love to.
All right. I think one of the biggest wake-up calls for me, and I hope for other people, right, was in the past year here. So I want everyone to just, like, put your whatever political beliefs aside, and regardless of what you think about whoever I'm about to bring up and whatever they did, think about just, like, what was done.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, probably. So, right, in February, right, Donald Trump got his Twitter account revoked and basically was blacklisted from the internet in general. And what happened, right, again, regardless of whether you agree with the decision to block him, or regardless of whether you agree with him or anything like that, right, think about for one individual to be, you know, banned from Twitter, right? It's like, okay, you know, you can live with that. And then getting banned from Facebook, it's like, all right, well, that's pretty big. But then AWS, Amazon Web Services, is kind of like the cloud provider for the whole fucking internet. Like, they are giant. And almost any startup company, like there were these small, what was it called? There was like Donald Trump Twitter. I forget what it was called. It was like, there was like a side social network. It was really small that
he made.
He didn't make it, but it was there for him once he got banned off Twitter, and he jumped on that. And they, just like almost every company, used AWS for their hosting. And Amazon, you know, for publicity reasons, decided we are going to remove any of our customers from hosting that, you know, provide him a platform. And it's now getting to the point where, again, regardless of who it is or what they're saying, big companies have the ability to silence anyone, right? And maybe you believe that specific instance was justified. Even if that's so, the fact that power lies within 3 or 4 major companies should be a wake-up call to anyone.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And like, I go to school for media stuff. Yeah. So this is what I looked at a lot in my media ethics class. And we could even look at the Wuhan lab conspiracy that got banned from everywhere.
Right.
And if it showed up They would take it off. No talk that this coronavirus came from a Wuhan lab.
Right.
Fast forward a year, and everyone's like, ugh,
they might have
the
been
Wuhan lab might have been where it
Yeah.
came from. And that's the problem with this. When you silence information, no matter if it's
Good or
bullshit,
bad.
you silence information. You need both sides.
Right.
Because how are you supposed to look like Rogan always says it best.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
speech counters bad speech.
Yes.
You need the bad speech because it's easy to skid off. If you have, there's a guy who went on, because he talked about our minds of having an immune system of sorts. If you have a strong immune system, minds meaning you're media literate and you could ask questions about this, you could get this bad information and you could realize this is false and this isn't true. But people are so willing just to not even look into things or question and make it seem like it's the internet's fault or this person's fault for having that information there. And I think it's on the person.
Yeah.
Like if you are susceptible to conspiracy theories that are wacky and crazy, like that people are reptiles, then that's fucking on you.
Yeah.
That's not on the information that's there. And that goes for the same stuff that happened there's like a Jewish town in the United States. I forgot what it was called, but there was this big problem because there's the Nazis made a march in this town.
In the U.S.?
Yeah, I think it was in the U.S. I forgot what the name of it was. Let's see. Whatever. It doesn't matter. If people want to look it up, they can look it up. And so the people in the town were like, fuck no. Like, we don't want these Nazis walking through it. And it was... So the police and the government had to decide, can these people march? And the answer was yes. Because if they're not doing anything causing violence, they sign up for it, do everything in law. Even though we don't agree with what they're doing at all, they still have the right to do it because this is America.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but that's the fact we need. That's why it's the First Amendment because it's so important.
Right. I mean, that's one of like the best and, for some situations, the worst things about our country. And I would personally always say it's the best is the fact that anyone, and that nowadays we're trying to toe that line of anyone, but historically it's been anyone has that right to speak their minds and spread information. And now moving that into like the digital age, we have to build infrastructure like blockchain that ensures the continuation of that First Amendment right.
Yeah.
So this example in the past couple of months where an individual was literally, prevented from getting any information out, it should be a wake-up call for a lot of people.
That's scary. And I think a big part comes down to accountability. Because in person, if I say something, you'll be like, James just said this. Yeah. I could keep you accountable for what you say. But online, you have such a shield from all that. Yeah. But with this blockchain stuff, making the decentralized Facebook, would you be able to make like a fake account? Or was that code always be stuck with you? Because I feel like that could solve so many issues. If no matter where I am online, I have a passport or a fingerprint that this is who you are.
Right. So things like that are definitely, talked about and in the works. The bigger challenges I would argue would be like scale. So if you think about the Ethereum blockchain, a better way to think about Ethereum, unlike Bitcoin where it's just like monetary transactions is all they're dealing with, Ethereum is kind of like this global supercomputer that you can literally do whatever you want on. So like theoretically you could, play like Crisis or Call of Duty on the Ethereum blockchain.
Lit.
And today, like in today's, current circumstances, it would be hysterically slow and incredibly expensive, like beyond belief, right? So that's why we don't have Ethereum Facebook right now. What we're moving towards is increasing the speed at which we can transact data on the Ethereum blockchain and the speed at which we can compute data and also the scale at which you can store data, right? All of these are things that centralized companies like Google and Facebook are really fucking good at. Like you can upload this, right? This is a 3-hour, probably 1080p video that you will upload to YouTube in 20 minutes, maybe even quicker.
Quick. The Wi-Fi is good here.
Yeah.
At school.
And it doesn't cost you a dime, right? that is amazing, right? And the problem is, like, the reason we're able to do that is because we sacrifice some control over the data, and YouTube's able to monetize it in their own way. With blockchain, bastards.
Can't even talk shit because they'll just take it down.
Exactly. We love you, Susan. Susan's the CEO.
Susan.
But yeah, so with blockchain, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because it's great. You know, you're independent, you're decentralized, you're free from like the totalitarian reign of YouTube and all that. But you do have to like pay the piper in terms of like, all right, someone's got to pay for this data to move. Someone's got to pay for this data to get stored somewhere. And what we're trying to do now is balance out, like, nobody really wants to pay for online services anymore. Like if there probably is actually a very small Ethereum Facebook, like kind of like an Instagram copycat. Would you use it though if it was $1 to post every time? Yeah, exactly. So bringing down the cost and, you know, scaling up the speed of the blockchain will eventually bring things like that into the realm of possibility.
So is YouTube and Instagram, and they pay for all this data transferring through advertisement? Yeah. Is that how they get most of their revenue to keep this up?
Yeah, no, Google, if you look at, like, I mean, they're all publicly traded companies, so you can literally look up down to the cent, you know, what percentage of Google's revenue comes from where, and it's all advertising. I think, well, Google has a good chunk from their cloud providing, like the Google Cloud is pretty big. Amazon is almost entirely AWS, like I think that's 60-something%, and Facebook almost entirely marketing. It's
all of it.
It's all ads. Yeah. And then what's the other one? Apple's one of the better ones, right?
They're all about security, I feel like.
Yeah. So Apple does something very unique in that, like, all these phones that we have, all anybody talks about is using AI to improve X, right? Mm-hmm. And the way most companies do it is like, we're going to get as much data from you as possible through, like, Google, right? They'll take your Gmail, your YouTube, your Chrome search history, and use all of that to improve some experience on the internet for you. And honestly, like, they do good stuff with it sometimes. Like, if you have an Android phone, Google now will literally, like, predict what you're going to do before you do it. And it's really impressive. So there's good things that come from having all that data.
Google.
What? Go ahead.
Just takes me right to Pornhub.
Yeah.
It's like, AI, James, we know where you're going. No, but that's yeah.
So that's the way most companies do it, is they'll take all your data off the phone and learn about you and then translate it into better experiences on the phone. Apple takes the approach where we want to keep all of your data on the device. Like things like, you might notice, like, the alarm clock app gives you, like, oh, hey, you should probably set an alarm today. Those type of, like, AI-driven experiences are done entirely on the device, which is kind of unique to Apple. And you were probably going to talk about, you brought up Facebook earlier, the recent, like, controversial move by Apple. In the latest iOS update, they did something where, so previously, right, all the apps that you installed on your phone got access to this device identifier. Like, it was like a long string of numbers that said, this is James's iPhone. And the apps could share that between them. So when you're in Facebook, you do all this stuff and it's got that device identifier. And then later, you know, you go on Chrome and you see, like, some, I don't know, you're searching for whatever, it's still got that device identifier with you. That's how, like, Google can see that you searched for bananas in your web browser and then serve you a banana ad on Gmail or YouTube. When what Apple did in the latest update was make it like a prompt window for users. Do you want to enable tracking or no? And when they say no, Facebook probably suffers the most from this, right? Because they can no longer provide their real customers, which are advertisers. You're not the customer of Facebook unless you're buying ads.
Yeah, we're the product.
Yeah, we are the product, right? Everyone loves that saying. And it's true. So Facebook can no longer provide their customers, these big advertisers, with as fine-grained detail into, like, who James Cunningham is. And so that hurts their bottom line, which was a pretty controversial decision on Apple's part there. But it was, like, a really cool lawsuit to watch, because it was like Facebook, this absolute behemoth, losing to Apple. And the best thing I think of is like that song, No Church in the Wild. And there's like a line like, what's a king to a god?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like kind of crazy watching them go at it. But
That is cool. They're tech giants, but the same thing happens in the TV and film industry.
Right.
Like the only reason these shows get produced is because of the commercials and the advertisements and the ad placements in it. That's the only thing that fuels, the biggest thing that fuels it, because our revenue that we give to it is not enough to sustain it.
Right.
So how do you think it's possible for this blockchain to even survive without advertisements like this? Or do you think there's like a beneficial part for advertisement? Because I do think it is good to get products out there, but when big corporations just own all of it, I think we need, like, because how are we supposed to know what the best products are when the only ones we see are the people that throw the most money into it?
Right.
I'm not sure. That's a lot. That's a big loaded
question. Yeah. The question about like advertising and blockchain, I think the most likely short-term solution will be a somewhat centralized, but blockchain dependent system, right? So imagine like a smaller company that pays for hosting on like a website or for an app. So it's just as easy as you opening Instagram, and there's a company that, you know, has the money to pay for maintaining the app and maintaining this website. But then when you post data, it's stored on the blockchain and the company doesn't hold the data. So I do imagine something of that form will emerge, where there is like a centralized authority between you and the blockchain. A perfect version would be like nothing, but I don't think that's realistic in the short term. So the way in which that middleman finances their upkeep of the site and app, it might have to be some advertisements. It could be subscription based, where like, you know, you pay, I don't know, $5 a year or something.
That really wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah, and all of this will work itself out, right, through capitalism.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
Because what I've been noticing a lot is that capitalism's great until the main goal is to make money, which is usually the main goal.
Yeah, it's always the goal.
Because it's never, in my ideal society, capitalism would be based off of or not even capitalism, just what we use would be, let's help the people. So instead of making processed food that are shit for people and that they'll just keep eating, we actually make food that are healthy and nutritious, even though it might cost a little more, but we're still giving the consumer, the people, what they need instead of what they want.
And I think the beauty of capitalism is, if you want great change, don't try to, I always say, like, don't try to build the process that you think that will result in the change you want. So like that example, if you want people to eat more healthy foods, I would argue you shouldn't try to go force companies like McDonald's to put healthy foods on their menu. I would say build a market that incentivizes people to eat healthy foods. So like, just like we talked about a carbon tax, some countries and states have actually put either legitimate like restrictions on the amount of sugar that can be in foods, or, you know, put a tax on foods above a certain, I don't know, threshold of healthiness, however you want to define that, and the market will work itself out. So like if the Wendy's 4 for $4 became 4 for $40, no one's gonna buy it. And Wendy's would have to find good tasting food that people like, is cheap, and is healthy. So if you set up infrastructure that incentivizes Wendy's to make really good, really affordable, healthy food, it will happen. And if it doesn't, the beauty of capitalism is Wendy's will be replaced as quickly as people can discover the best, cheapest, healthy food that they like.
That would be amazing, because that would solve the food deserts across the country. It would solve so much obesity issues. It's just because the cheapest shit is the worst for you.
Right. And that's like how markets work, right? I mean, the way, like, we control way more than we think as consumers. Like if you really disagreed with, I'm trying to think, like, if you really disagreed with like the decision Apple just made and you thought it was terrible, go buy an Android. Like, you can. And that's kind of the beauty of capitalism. But like nowadays there are these kind of like barriers to consumer, like it's tougher now to like get Apple to go out of business from a couple people not buying iPhones than it was. Yeah. So, but on like when you scale things up to something like the food problem, if the market fairly priced things that were bad for you as they should be, like to be more expensive if you want to hurt your body, it would naturally enforce consumers to lean towards healthier options.
Yeah. The only reason for that is because I'm for freedom.
Right.
In every choice. It's like, well, if you want to hurt yourself, go for it. Like, I don't give a shit. That's the same with like, I believe with drugs, like they should all be legalized. I could go into that, but like fast food, if you want to eat shit, you can. Yeah. And I don't think it should really cost you, but then it's like, well, I want you to be healthy.
Right.
So but that's why I kind of like the tobacco tax. Like I'm going to charge you more if you're going to put this shit in. So I guess it could be a good alternative to get people to start not being fat shits.
There's like middle grounds. Like New York did the 16-ounce soda ban or whatever it was. So you can no longer buy an extra large soda or whatever in New York. And maybe now for some, on some small scale, there's a consumer out there who sees like, okay, I was going to buy like this XL soda, but now if I want it, I have to buy 2 smalls, and that seems annoying. Maybe I will just get an XL lemonade instead. Yeah. Or something like that.
I think that is better. I think I'm a big believer of the balance. Yeah. That's kind of like my logo is just the angel and the me in the middle. Yeah. So, whatever. But everything like Aristotle's mean in the between or mean, whatever. Okay. So there's the too much on one side, and then there's the too little, and then the middle is the golden mean. Mm-hmm. So you could use the example of eating, just food. Yeah. Well, I could eat a lot and be unhealthy, or I could eat too little and be unhealthy. Right in between is the golden spot, which is the perfect spot. And if we can, that's why all these like debates, it's like, I'm right, you're wrong. It's one or the other. It's black and white. Right. It's not. Yeah, it's the middle. We need it. It's always the middle. Right. And that's the beauty of it. And that's where our world balances. You could see that everywhere. But I'm going to go back to, I wanted to hear about your privatization. I can't even speak today. Privatization of the space with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh, okay.
I want to hear, this is a complete 180, but it was just still very curious.
So, I forget the year. It was probably like early SpaceX, right? So like 2012 maybe. Famous astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson was on some show and talked about how he did say he was a fan of everything that companies like SpaceX were doing for like space exploration. The one thing that he was adamant about was that privatized space travel will never lead a space frontier, which basically means like he doesn't think any private company will ever have the means to lead humanity to a new destination that we've never,
was this before SpaceX?
It was like mid SpaceX, so probably.
So he doesn't think they're going to take off.
It was so I'm sure now he's probably saying that a little bit less. Yeah. But his argument was that you need massive public, like governmental cooperation and funding to make giant mega projects like that economically feasible, right? So. It's kind of like an argument against capitalism, right? He was saying that I don't think capitalism will ever support an entity to the extent that they need to get to Mars or something like that. Yeah. And I think now, hopefully, we're starting to see he was wrong, right? SpaceX, being the biggest like poster child example of this, started way back in like 2006 or something, with the single goal of making space travel more accessible to anyone. And currently, like their bread and butter is the Falcon 9. It's a single stage rocket that nice. It basically launches small satellites into orbit. And then they do have a Falcon Heavy, which can launch much larger, heavier items. And they basically build that by strapping 3 of these together, 3 of these Falcon 9s together. They do these launches regularly now for small to medium sized companies looking to put anything in orbit. And they even now transport both cargo and crew to the International Space Station. So that is their bread and butter. But the whole entree, going with the food analogy, is being built in Boca Chica, Texas right now. So have you seen,
Austin?
Yeah. Have you seen any of these videos by chance?
I mean, I see them on Instagram of just the rockets.
Yeah.
It's kind of sick.
Right. So they, in Boca Chica, Texas, which is effectively being renamed Starbase, Texas. Like
that's so badass. That's so sick.
They're trying to change the name of the city to Starbase, which is pretty cool.
Dude, that name's awesome.
Right.
Where are you from? Starbase.
Well, the goal would be one day this will be the gateway to Mars, right? That city. What they're doing there is working on the Starship sort of launch system, SLS. And it's confusing naming, but there's this one rocket that looks like a giant grain silo. Like it looks like something you'd see at a farm. Just a giant steel building, kind of really, really tall. And so far what we've seen them do is build serial numbers 1, so SN1 through SN16. And they skipped a couple numbers in the middle. But 16 of these rockets have been built to varying level. Like some of them were fully constructed. The first one that flew was the 7th one, and it did this little hop, right? It went up like 150 meters and back down.
I saw that one. That was crazy.
Yeah. And then the SN8, serial number 8, was the first one to go 15 kilometers, I think, in the sky, and then do a belly flop, right? So, like, if this is the rocket, typically you'd see a rocket, like, take off.
Yeah.
And the Falcon 9s, when they land, they come, like, straight down.
Yeah.
And they land like that. This one is huge, right? Like, it's astronomical, the amount of space. They have more, it's called payload to orbit, like, the amount of actual stuff you can bring. It's, like, more than a 747. So, it's massive.
That's a lot.
And, so it goes up to, it's like, for the test flights, it's only like 15 kilometers, and then does this belly flop on the way down. And it's this massive fucking building just belly flopping down. And you're like, this doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Like, where's this going to end? And the reason, well, what happens is they at the very, very end here, they relight the engines on the bottom and do this kick maneuver, which over rotates the rocket. And then they have to gyroscope the engines pointing in that direction to get it back and land perfectly.
I think I saw that one. I'm like, this thing's gonna fucking crash.
Yeah. And then the last second, it's like
so sick.
And you wonder, like, okay, why the fuck are they doing this? Like, that looks way more difficult than it needs to be. And it's really like the most efficient way to do it. So when they're coming in from orbit, your biggest enemy is speed.
Yeah.
Because people think orbit is like a height, but it's really a velocity. I mean, feasibly, if you're going fast enough, you could be in orbit 10 feet off the ground. You just got to be going really, really fucking fast. But if you're going fast enough parallel to the surface of the Earth, then you're like you're falling towards the Earth at the same rate that you're escaping the gravitational pull of Earth, and effectively you just orbit the Earth in a circle. That's why, like, on the ISS, they're actually moving incredibly fast. I think they orbit the Earth every, I don't know. I'm not going to put a number out there because I could be way off. But so, all right, they get something to orbit and they're going really, really fast. And now it's like, how do we get this really expensive ship back to Earth? We got to turn it around, point back to where we wanted it to go, and we got to go really, really fast against Earth because we want to slow down. And there is so much heat building up on the bottom of this rocket coming towards Earth really, really fast. And when they're trying to, like, slow down to land, they're battling speed and heat. So the best way for them to do that is to maximize the surface area of the ship that comes in contact with air, because that's where the heat comes from. It's like air hitting the belly of the ship and
creating like a friction.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So they point the belly towards the air because that's the biggest, like, part of the ship that they can. And that slows them down like a ton, right? Think about, like, if you were pushing...
It's like surface area.
Yeah. Like driving a semi-truck versus driving, like, a little Prius. The semi-truck is going to hit more air than the Prius. So that's why they come down on the belly and do that crazy flip.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So back to the sending the satellites into space, how much space shit do we have? Like space junk? Like, isn't that a
Yeah.
problem that we have so many satellites orbiting Earth?
Yeah, it's gonna be a problem, I'd say. I'd also argue that it's less of a problem probably than I think most people think. So there's like you can do the math on if you were to drop a what was it, like a city? No, wait. I think it was like if you were to drop like the size of a house, like square footage, somewhere randomly on Earth, like a totally random location, the chances of you hitting a person or a man-made structure are like nothing. Like it's
'Cause
very,
there's
very rare.
so much water.
Yeah, water and just like land that we don't
Yeah.
even touch. Like I mean, think about even like the normal suburban house, like your property. I guess most people, right? The house is like, well, probably only 50% of your property. Like if you have a front and a backyard.
Yeah, true.
And then like grocery stores or whatever, like the parking lots. Anyway,
Yeah.
but the bigger thing is like water or just huge deserts. Then space, right? It's way bigger than or like orbit. There's way more surface area than the Earth because we're so much further out. And we've sent up a lot of stuff, but not as much stuff as we have on Earth.
Okay.
So if the chances of you hitting something on Earth are basically zero, think about the chance of you hitting something, leaving Earth. Like
Fair.
it's a bigger area, so greater like freedom.
Yeah. But
And
I'm not flying
less
around
stuff.
in space.
Yeah.
Like these things are moving. Like, do other
Right.
satellites that get shot up from different companies and organizations know where, say, SpaceX is?
Is putting their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, do they have a database or something?
Yeah, there's like global efforts for this, and I don't think any are perfect because not everyone wants to share exactly where all their satellites are at any given moment, for various reasons,
Yeah.
military stuff. But the bigger issue, which like most people are concerned about, is like a collateral or compounding effect, where if one small piece of debris hits a certain satellite, that's a slightly bigger satellite will hit a slightly
It's a
bigger
domino
satellite.
effect.
Yeah, and actually, just the other week, the ISS was damaged. A small piece of debris cut a hole in a robotic arm on the outside of the space station. So yeah, it's a real issue. I'm not trying to minimize it, but everything will. I mean, unless it's massive, everything will eventually burn up. That's in orbit.
That's good. That's
it'll,
good.
It'll land somewhere.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things SpaceX is doing. Have you ever heard of Starlink?
No.
Okay.
Well, I've heard of. I don't know it.
So it's like, so the way like we have mobile data on our phones is brought to us by like these carriers like Verizon, AT&T, and they build cell towers. Some people might still think that your phone talks to satellites, and unless you have a very special satellite phone, you're not doing it. Like no one has that. So your phone is talking to the nearest cell tower, and cell towers are really awesome because they can transmit data at a really high rate of speed to a huge region. Like,
Can it go faster than light? Like the
No.
transferring of data?
no, so nothing's faster than light that we can transmit data. What?
Dude,
Yeah.
I just saw, did you see that? They just figured out some shit that can go faster than light.
I think there's
I was
like,
what?
I think there are like what are they called?
I don't know.
Quarks or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. Like, what the fuck?
But in like the realm of what we can do currently, a fiber optic cable is like the fastest way that we have to transfer data. And the way that works is it's like a really thin cable of glass that we shoot light through, and that's it. Ones and zeros. That's what
Yeah.
light is, on or off. So that's how we transmit data. So basically, the cell towers are the slowest part of the chain, right? From my phone to the cell tower is not super fast because it's like radio waves and energy. Once we hit the cell tower, it converts that signal into fiber optics that go through the ground, through literally cables that take you to Facebook's data center. Like if I open Instagram, there's a radio wave from my phone to the cell tower. Cell tower converts that signal to light that goes through the ground and finds the shortest route or the best route to the nearest Facebook data center and gets me Instagram. That's how everything works.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That your phone does that so quickly.
It is insane.
That's what Musk wants to get into, right? Like even quicken our
Yeah.
bandwidth between our
Oh,
phones
wow. Yeah.
and that.
Yeah, wait, let me finish Starlink,
Oh, yeah,
and then
sorry,
we're going.
sorry,
Then we're
yeah.
going to Neuralink.
Yeah.
Very similar though. They're similar. So Starlink is trying to increase the bandwidth between or not really bandwidth, the accessibility of internet to the world. And what their premise is so to communicate from like Earth to a satellite, you do need like a small dish. So they sell, I think it's like $500. It's not super cheap. A SpaceX like small satellite dish, like about this big, that you can put either on your house or like on like an RV or in your backyard, and that will connect to like the nearest Starlink satellites. And these things are crazy. They have, I don't know what the number's at right now, but like 800 and 900 of these satellites that are in this really complex orbit around Earth where they're constantly moving but constantly covering the entire Earth because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
The way they work, right? So for people who live, like a lot more people than we think don't have access to high-speed broadband internet. And the reason why is because it's expensive for companies like Comcast to put fiber optic cable 100 miles into nowhere just to service this small like little
5
town.
people.
Yeah. So this Starlink would mean that like this town or even like one person in their house could have this satellite connecting to the Starlink satellites, which are constantly orbiting. And their advantage, right? It's slow getting from the satellite on Earth to the first Starlink satellite, but they make up for that like slow period because space is a vacuum, right? So when they shoot light between their satellites, so like if I'm in Idaho and I'm trying to connect to a server in China, if my satellite's going to send a signal, energy signal to the one in space, it's going to convert that to light and shoot it to the next closest satellite, which will go to the next closest all the way around the Earth to China and then back down to Earth. And the reason it's faster is because light travels faster in a vacuum than it does through glass. So like the fiber optic cables that we have on Earth, light's actually moving a little bit faster in space.
Okay. How do these like lights getting thrown around in space not like hit each other? Can they like hit each other and just mess up a signal?
They definitely can. Like light, can get distorted and stuff. It's sort of just like redundancy and precision of measuring like the location of the laser. But
lasers.
Yeah. Starlink is it's not going to replace Verizon or anything. It's not trying to.
Just an add-on.
It's going to service a ton of people who don't have who don't have fast internet right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Damn, Elon is just like on another level of doing shit.
He's a cool guy.
He's connecting people.
Yeah.
But what do you think about
Neuralink? Okay, I could tell you when I get into that. Yeah, dude, Neuralink is pretty cool. So just like you said, right, we've got this delay between our phones and the internet and the information we want to reach. And the problem Neuralink is trying to address, the most immediate problem is like brain disorders. But the fun thing that they're doing is like,
I don't know if it's fun.
Okay.
It's terrifying.
The terrifying thing that they're doing is trying to increase the bandwidth between our brain and just general information. So just like how our computers are, I don't know how much you know about like computer processors, but it's just like tons of electrons getting shot through these different like gates that are kind of like small little logic decisions. And that's how like everything works on every computer in the world. It's like electrons moving through these series of gates really fast that turn into YouTube videos or a podcast. And
dude, I don't get that at all. Like, does it make sense to you?
It's slowly starting to yeah. It's
I'm
the
like,
scale.
what?
It's the scale that baffles
Just
people.
lights.
It's easy to, like, if you made a really simple example, I could draw on a piece of paper how to like add 2 bits. Not right now. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
because I probably couldn't. I was
Yeah.
bluffing. But you could like pretty simply understand how 2 bits get added together. If you like drew it out on a piece of paper, if all you could work with was 1 and 0, I could draw out like a little circuit that would add them, like add 1 and 1, and then you just scale from there. That's how computers work.
Yeah, but they're just
The scale is crazy. The amount of transistors you can fit, and but so our brains are basically like the same thing, but we don't really understand those specific logic gates and everything. We have tons of electrons firing in our brain that process the signals that we, interpret from, the light that hits our eyes, the audio that hits our ears, and the smells that hit our nose, right?
Do we do the same things computers do?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, like, computers are just dumb rocks that we tricked into thinking.
Yeah, we'll get there too. I want to talk to you about that. That YouTube comment you
Yeah.
had, I'm like, dude.
That was my application to come on.
Yeah, it was awesome.
So, okay, like the Neuralink, right? It's trying to bridge that gap between the logic gates that we understand and the ones that we built in computers and the sort of neurons that we don't quite understand how they're firing in our brain. So right now, the brain, like even at the most highest level, we kind of poke it, see which parts light up, and derive some correlations from that data. And that's exactly what they just did in their most recent like published video. Have you seen like the monkey?
Yes.
Yeah,
with the Slurpee.
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny. He's just ponging.
So what they did there, right, was pretty simple. I don't want to say simple, but like they had a monkey that was playing Pong with a joystick, the video game Pong. And
he was playing Pong.
Yeah. Oh, he was playing beer pong.
Yeah.
Man, that would have been really cool.
That would have been awesome. That should be their next thing. Get this monkey to play beer pong with its mind.
Oh my gosh.
Fuck. Yes,
but then you get him drunk.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll have to look into that stuff too. If they actually want to see how it goes with like other substances.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So the Slurpee was just an incentive to get the monkey to keep playing the game and to teach him, right? Like when he does well, he gets more Slurpee.
Yeah.
That's all the Slurpee was. The joystick is how he first controlled it, right? He went up and down, I think it's just up and down.
But it was disconnected, right? The joystick.
In the beginning, they had it connected, and what they were doing is he was playing with the joystick, and that was controlling the game. He also had the Neuralink implant in his head, and it's at the most basic level just listening for electrical signals from any part of the brain that it can read from. So what they do on their back end, right? They get several hours of the monkey actually playing the game with the joystick, and they can match that data up, like the joystick data, which is up and down. They match that up with these, hundreds of thousands of readings from this monkey's brain, and there's machine learning algorithms that can find correlations between like when he puts the joystick up almost every single time, this specific wavelength of, electrons are, excited, right? We see a spike in this graph every time it goes up, and we see a spike in this graph every time the joystick goes down. So they kind of just piece together like, all right, this means joystick up, this means joystick down, and train the Neuralink sensor on that. And then they do the same exact situation, but like you said, the joystick is totally unplugged. Meaning the joystick doesn't control the game at all, and they just map that thought process from the monkey's brain into controls for the video game, and it worked, right? Like he played it perfectly. So that's kind of the level they're at now. If you like extrapolate where that can be in 10, 20 years, the dream would be like, can you type on your phone with your brain short term? Because right now, like that is the bandwidth gap between us and all the information in the world is the rate that we can type and the rate that we can read.
Mm-hmm.
So
and process.
Yeah, of course. So, if you can, first just being able to type with your mind might be faster than your fingers. Like, okay, that's a big bandwidth increase. And then it's like a step further. Well, maybe I don't even need to just, first it's like, that's like writing to your phone, writing data to your phone. How do you write data to your brain? I don't think, at least they haven't published anything on doing that yet, but you'd have to, do the opposite of what we just did, where you show the monkey, like, I don't know, you teach it something and you figure out what parts of the brain get lit up from it learning. And then you try to just forget about, like, turn off the teaching part and just ignite those parts of the brain, see if the monkey still learned it. That's like trying to take data from your phone and put it in your head without a screen, without speakers or anything like that.
Because Elon was talking about how he wanted, the end goal is just we would talk.
Right, yeah.
So that kind of seems like because I feel like it comes with learning. Like that has to ignite the same parts of me reading a book.
Yeah.
So that scares me because it's like, okay, if I have all the information on the internet and all the information's not true, that could get into some sticky
Yeah.
situations. And from an ethical standpoint and a moral standpoint, I am a little worried
About Neuralink.
about Neuralink, because if I can read your mind and get all this information in my head, I don't know if it's always going to be used for good.
Yeah.
And I guess I can't, nothing's ever used only for good, but there's always, like when you said a two-edged sword, I think everything's a two-edged sword. Literally everything has pros and cons, no matter what. You drink enough water, you're going to die. So, yeah, fuck. Yeah, but it just worries me, because it feels like we're taking away a human aspect of us.
Right.
And I don't know if all advancements in technology are advancements for humankind.
Yeah. Well, that's so an interesting thing that I think you'd care a lot about, being like communication space and things. When we do exactly what we're doing now, is talking, our brains are really good at, and they have to be good at, compressing data, both in and out, right? The light that's hitting our eyes is a tremendous amount more data than we're actually perceiving in our brains. So like our brain has to compress and process like all the light that's hitting our eyes into something that we can interpret and understand. Vice versa, when I'm speaking to you, like I have to think, I have a thought in my head that I want to get out, and I've learned a language that has tools for me to, express that thought. But even though we have a really good language, like English is pretty damn good, you can express a lot of thought, it's still a compression of the root thought that was in my head into this language we built, that I can then, say to you. And then your brain has to do the opposite. It has to take this compressed data that I sent to you and, extract it and say, like, when I can say something elusive, and you'll probably get a bigger meaning from it than what the words actually mean, right? Like if I say, do you want to get food? You can probably, interpret that I'm hungry or something like that.
Yeah.
So language, the good, so there's pros to being able to like get direct thought transfer, right? There's less data loss, because sometimes when we're having conversations,
Loss in translation.
Yeah. But a lot of creativity and inspiration comes from the different ways people interpret things, right?
Very true.
In these podcasts and stuff, you can get totally inspired by something you heard someone say, and someone else who listens to it gets totally inspired in a different way, the same exact sentence. So there's like an essence of creativity and expression that we lose if we take away that compression and decompression, which is, what
the
we
human
do.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. I never thought of it in that way, because
It's nuts.
that is really nuts, because, geez, I wouldn't want to lose that at all.
know.
But I always, when I was a kid, I'm like, I wish I could just show you what my mind's thinking.
Yeah, so there's pros and cons.
It is, but we got to find, I don't know if I'm going to find the line, but I think computers, these programmers need to start working with philosophers. I really do, because all the Greek philosophers in the day, thousands of years ago, always said the best king would be a philosopher king, one that thought and didn't actually thought big pictures, which I agree with. And when we're going into programming this kind of stuff, like I said earlier, advancement is not always good. We need to know where we're going. We need genetic engineering or genetic manipulation, like the CRISPR stuff.
Yeah.
That
Needs regulation.
Yeah, it definitely needs regulation, and they're only going against it, not against it, because they have no regulations in China, just making super soldiers. This is what we were commenting, what you commented, that really opened my mind, talking about AI. You're just saying it's a silicon base, and we're carbon based. What would actually be the difference between us and a computer?
Right.
Once they get to a point of, Stephen Hawking, didn't he's in human, I don't know, life or evolution, there's going to be a point we should be worried about AI getting advanced enough where they're just they could pass the Turing test. Yeah. And I was listening to what's his name, Lex Friedman.
I love him.
He's awesome. Yeah. He had a smart guy on, and they're talking about, well, these things could either get to a point where they trick us into thinking to making us think that they
Yep.
could pass the Turing test or they'll actually pass it. And I really do think, well,
What's the difference?
yeah. Then I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius right now. And a lot of like the Stoics believe that we have a part of us, like the universe. This could go into computers too.
Yeah.
That we have this, they call it logos, which is like logic. Well, we derive logic and logically, and
And then ethos, right?
ethos. I'm not as
Okay.
like I learned about in my ancient philosophy class, but not as well
Yeah.
knowledged in that. But the logos is just everything. It's like the God. I don't want to say God because that puts images in people's minds,
Right.
but it's just everything. And each one of us has a little bit of logos in us, which makes us human. Like it's our fuel. Like we have our meat vessels,
Yeah.
and we have our brain that's not us. Like, and then we have I think of it like a soul. Like that's the fuel that powers us and makes us human. And I think animals have it too.
Yeah.
But I don't know because no one knows where consciousness come from, even though
Right.
I think they just pinpointed it. They saw some activation in a certain part of the brain, but no one really knows where it comes from. So do you think like a computer is going to be able, if they are conscious, will they be conscious like us or just act consciously?
Well, I want to talk about us first.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
And where like you said, where our consciousness lies and what makes us human.
It's probably
right?
a good start.
Yeah, and it is the start. So, like, without getting into too many like religious beliefs and stuff, I'm gonna operate on what we know today, or at least what I know today, and assume that we did evolve from a smaller, simpler organism.
Yeah.
One of my favorite like quotes or whatever is actually from the head of artificial intelligence at Tesla, Andrej Karpathy, and he said, if you shine photons at a rock for long enough, eventually a Tesla will appear, a Tesla car, like literally like a Model S. And it's like, what the hell is this guy talking about? And it's like, if you believe like the traditional scientific path of evolution, right? Earth at one point, was, and it still is, just a giant rock. And the sun is what gives all energy of any kind to our planet. And, billions and trillions of years ago, right, it was literally just a floating rock. And after enough time of the sun shining on it, right, these photons from the sun allowed maybe a single cell organism to be formed, which grew into multi-cell organisms, bacteria, developed feet and whatever, lungs, got out of the water. Maybe thousands of years later, humans were just stumbling around eating grass and stuff, and then one guy picked up a rock and threw it, and that was the very first use of a tool. And we've just grown from there, right? So literally, if you shine photons like from the sun long enough at the earth, you get what we have today, which is like Teslas and businesses and internet. It's crazy, right? But like, think about from like a consciousness development standpoint, it all did come from somewhere. And I mean, this then gets to like, what do you believe? So certain people have totally different beliefs on this, and that's totally fine. Like, I probably have a pretty boring or like maybe pessimistic view, which is like, if you could perfectly simulate so we live in like a quantum universe where things don't exist in a binary state. So computers right now are binary, ones and zeros.
Just on and off.
Yeah. Our universe, and like specifically like the position of electrons, is something that's not certain. We don't know exactly where an electron is in a given orbital level at any time. We can only approximate it. And I think that's why, if you were to like simulate the human brain and you tried to build this perfect simulation, it wouldn't produce, like James Cunningham, because there is the unknown in our ability to simulate it. Like, we don't understand exactly where all these electrons are and exactly how they interact. And that, I think, is where a lot of our consciousness and our soul and personality come from. I am a believer that if you had, a perfect quantum computer simulation of any given organism, and you could accelerate that simulation to be faster than than the rate of occurrence, like the rate of at which time passes, you'd eventually develop like a human being. And, you know, that might take some of the randomness and personality, like fun stuff out of being human. But at the end of the day, at least, you know, the way I've interpreted what we know today is we are just electrons firing between neurons, and we don't quite understand how it all works today. But in computers, it's the exact same thing. The difference being we built, you know, those logic gates to process information. You know, we didn't build everything in our brains. They came from somewhere, wherever you want to believe. So if we continue to, like, you know, evolve and develop silicon-based thought processors, we'll call them, not computers, or information processors, because that's all we are. Eventually, you know, we might stumble across something that either resembles or even exceeds the information processing capabilities of ourselves. And I think the biggest difference will be scale, because we're limited by, you know, our carbon-based life forms. We need
food.
Yeah, we need food. We need sleep. Water. And we can't process as much information as, like, you know, computers can. So eventually, you know, if we do get to a point where we can build a system or an intelligence that can, you know, really pass like the Turing test, which is, for, you know, if anyone doesn't know, it's just like a simple test that says a system or a computer is deemed to have passed the Turing test if it can convince a human that it's indistinguishable from a human or a computer. So, like, if you, like, go online and you have a conversation with, like, a chat bot, honestly, some of them, if it's just a text conversation, it would probably pass the Turing test. But now people argue, like, well, that's not enough, because if you take away the visual aspect or whatever, maybe it's not fair. Regardless, you know, if a computer really does get to the point where it's indistinguishable from a human, it's indistinguishable from a human. And I don't think there's that big of a difference, other than, like I said, the scale and the origins.
Yeah. I also feel like for humans, I don't know if computer silicon-based forms are ever going to get to the point where they can, because our bodies are constructed so we can, like you were saying earlier, perceive the world. Like, we could touch, we could taste, we can smell, we could see, we could feel, which I think is a big part. We have emotions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if emotions come from an evolution of our brains so we can get better at surviving, because we're like social animals. Yeah. Because we see it in primates too, that they have morals, like they have empathy. They have, by a bunch of examples, like one of what's it called? Chimp gets in a fight with another chimp. The chimp that loses, like a baby chimp, will go up to it and, like, console it. Yeah. Like, it shows morals. And there's and we see that we even see that in trees. Like, trees speak underground, and they're connected. This is nuts to me. This is why, another thing I didn't say in the food, well, if we believe in ethical reasons for not killing animals, well, we're doing the same with plants, because they're alive too, and they communicate with each other. But whatever. Back to these trees, they communicate underground, and older trees that have a lot of energy or whatever, they give it to the younger trees so they can grow. Right. And if one has more and another doesn't have a lot one day, then they'll give it to them, and they'll share. And the bats do it too. If one bat eats a lot and one doesn't, they'll give them food, because next time maybe they'll give them some. So we see it everywhere, and I'm not sure if it makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, because if we're all going to, like, we want each other to survive, because if you survive, I'm better off from it. So it makes sense from that way. And I don't know if silicon-based will evolve in that way.
I think, like, to bring it a bit more back to earth, the way AI is being developed currently, like my comment on YouTube said, current AI is just tricking rocks into thinking. And that's exactly what it is. Like, the way that we develop AI on, like, a really quick tutorial scale is we kind of looked at the brain and said, like, all right, we have a ton of these neurons. When like a signal passes to this one, it will only pass maybe like a quarter of that amount of electricity on to the next one, or like 70% or 30%. It has, like, these weights set to it on, like, how much it passes to the next one, and that continues through all the different neurons in our brain. And that's basically what like computer scientists of the early 2000s or even like the 90s looked at and said, you know what, let's try to do this in computers where we have these weights that we set. So like the way we train AIs nowadays is you have this neural network is what it's called, of a ton of like abstract weights. They're just like made up things, right? We just have it. All it is like on the simplest level, if I pass into an algorithm a 1, like the number 1, it goes through a weight and then it passes out like 0.7 or whatever. That's like a single neuron. And like if I combine that, go to the next one maybe passes 50%. So if I pass it in 0.7, pass out 0.35. And we basically, as like computer scientists, just put a ton of these weights together in like a neural network, like a bunch of them, and started them all off at whatever, like random numbers. We gave them totally random weights. And then we took something like an image of a water bottle, and we were say you're trying to build like an algorithm that can tell whether something's an object or like a food, right? We pass it in this water bottle image, and you take the image and you convert it into numbers, which is literally just like, if I take an image on my phone, it has a resolution like 1920 by 1080 or something like that. Every one of those pixels has like 3 values, red, green, blue, and sometimes alpha. Anyway, so like pictures are just numbers. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So we convert the picture to a ton of numbers, and then to this neural network, we pass in all these numbers, and it goes through the weights totally randomly and like spits out a random 1 or 0 at the end. Like we make them converge on something that if it's above 0.5, it'll produce a 1. If it's less than 0.5, it'll produce a 0. And that tells us like, yes, we think this is an object, or no, we think it's food, or either way, you know. That's like training an AI. And at first it's like totally random and it produces a terrible error. But if I give it millions of pictures of water bottles and food, eventually it keeps slowly adjusting those weights. Because like I show it the correct answer after I say, okay, you got that one wrong. Like this is not food. And then it goes back and it says, well, maybe if I adjusted these couple weights a little bit in this direction, we'll be closer to the right answer. And we do that millions and millions of times. That's how these neural networks actually learn. And that's the technology that's driving self-driving cars, the thing that gives you your YouTube recommendeds. It's just much bigger neural networks that take in tons of data. So that's like, things like that are called like narrow AI, where it's focused on one or maybe a few tasks. The scary thing people think of is like general AI, where, I mean, you scale it up, the inputs to that neural network is all the data in the universe, and the output is, you know, unknown. It could do whatever it wants. That's kind of like general AI, which doesn't exist as far as we know today. So I think the scarier short-term reality is several very good narrow-based AI products.
Narrow AI products kind of seem like babies.
Yeah.
And us. Just we learn. Like we put things in our mouth as a kid and we're like,
yeah,
not
not
food.
Exactly. Yeah. They
But-
just learn. Well, I actually learn a lot slower, but it's that they can take 1 billion tests in like
quickly.
a minute. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you think if these general AI comes to be, or even the narrow AI, you think it's immoral
Immoral.
that we're thinking, because do you watch Black Mirror?
Yeah, I know what you're going with.
Yeah. The guy, is it immoral that we're causing, because there's Descartes who says, I think, therefore I am.
Right.
So if a computer thinks it's thinking,
Yep. Then does it
should we even be using it?
and does it deserve rights?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean,
'Cause computer scientists need to be thinking about this stuff, because they could be creating
right.
life.
I think for the time being, we're nowhere near a decision like that. But you're right in that, you know, things can move quickly, and we should be thinking about it. If it's something that's still dependent on human like interaction, where like it needs an operator or it needs input, then, you know, I think it's justified to call it a tool. When it gets to the point where it no longer requires our maintenance or our support, you know, then I honestly don't think it will be our decision whether or not we use it.
Yeah.
It'll be its decision whether it uses us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we probably won't have to make that decision. It'll be made for us.
Yeah, true. Fucking hell. Because I think it's interesting. I was talking to my priest, and I was asking, like, what does God want? This is kind of religious, but
Sure.
it was just like he wants us to know the truth. Like, he is truth. The closest we are to it, that's him. And we're human, and there's a lot of human errors. So for us to find truth is difficult. I always wonder, like, how do we get through? There's so much information, not all of it's true. But I feel like kind of silicone-based things would be able to, because they have all the information that could process this. But then at the end of the day, it's just, what is truth? Now I'm kind of just getting sunken down into this.
An interesting thing I've heard Elon say plenty of times is that the universe is the answer, and what we need to do is learn as much about it so that we can ask the right questions. Basically saying, like, everybody wants to know, like, the meaning of life, and maybe, the answer is right in front of us, and it's here in the universe, but maybe that's not the right question to ask. And there's like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. They joke about, they asked this super intelligence, what is the meaning of life? And it gave them 42 was the answer. It's like, what? So yeah, that's one way to look at it. Like, we just got to explore this universe, learn as much about it as we can, and then figure out what we're supposed to do here.
Yeah, and I think that is very interesting, because there's so many philosophers there's just like, look in. I do think that's very true, because I believe everything on the micro scale can be seen on the macro scale. It's just different levels. And for us as humans, probably going to be a lot harder to see what's on the macro scale, like the universe, or that's pretty biggest you can get, or the tiny scale, like quarks. Yeah. So I think the answer to the universe is literally within ourselves. And what a lot of these thinkers have been seeing is it's being a moral and just person. Like, you have a better life going off. Ooh, this just reminded me. I'm just going to throw it in here. But I was thinking last night, I'm like, if the universe was created by a creator, because I don't know if it's infinite, so it's just a constant loop of just, it's always been there, or it expands and collapses on itself, or there's a creator that created, because I don't know. There's a lot of theories, and I want to pick your brain about that too. What do you think?
Yeah.
But there's just, like you're saying, there's the randomness of the computer, and then there's unity and design, right? People usually think of them as separate, but I was thinking, like, they're kind of the same exact thing, because if you have design everywhere, the space is randomness. Okay. And where there's randomness, everything that the randomness, like the matter is design. It's unity. What do you think about that?
I mean,
if that makes sense, or do you think the space in between the randomness is still random?
So I think randomness is a relative term.
Fair.
And that comes down to, like, the original question of, well, where do you think the universe came from? So bringing it back, like, inside of a computer, random really is not random. The algorithms, like, they can't do random. In fact, computers are really bad at random. So we use algorithms that are, like, close at pretending to be random, but most of them you can like, if you know the math behind them, you can actually predict the next random number that will come out of a random number generator. So what we do with, like, computer science is we use elements of basically, like, from the mind of this computer, it cannot do random because it knows everything in its universe. It knows the value of every bit inside it. So to compute a random bit is impossible. What it has to do to really get random is take an element of the external universe, something unknown to it. So, like, one very fun, this is not actually used much in computer science, but, like, a fun way of computing random would be you take, like, a live stream of, like, a waterfall. Seriously, this is, like, something in nature that's never exactly the same, and you take, like, an average of all the pixel values, and it's always going to be slightly different, and you do a lot of math to it, and that gives you actually a pretty good random number. So think about, like, from the scale of a computer, to get true random, we have to go outside of the scope of that computer's universe. For us, it's just a bigger universe that we have to go outside of. Like, we can think that, like, the waterfall is random, or if we roll a die, that's pretty random, but it's just a bigger level of abstraction. If you take a step outside of our known universe, one entity that understood every electron or atom in the known universe would have no concept of random, because it knows everything. Would be random.
That makes a lot of sense. You're making me think that there is no randomness anymore. Because if
It's
I
all
knew
relative.
exactly
Where the die was,
like the angle the die was hitting,
exactly.
what the wind was doing, or air conditioning.
It's just a lack of knowledge, right?
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
And I guess if the creator, what do you think the universe, do you think it either, I mean, obviously, like, we don't fucking know.
Yeah,
but I'm just curious, because I think, I'll give you my thought.
Sure. Okay.
I think, I don't know, because there's the argument, like, everything has a cause, but then if everything has a cause, then what was the first to knock it over? So I kind of just think it's infinite loop, but I don't know how it got there to start. So I guess I have to think, to agree with that, is that it's always been there. So it's always been there, and I do believe in the Big Bang, and then the collapse, the big, what do they call it? The big fap,
right?
Not the big fap, or the big clap, or some shit like
fap.
Yeah, the big fap, or big bounce, I think it's called. So I believe it goes out, and then eventually it gets too big and expands. Even though Neil deGrasse was saying the universe is infinite, or there's different sizes of infinite.
Yeah.
But I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck does that even mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the different size of infinity thing is just a way of, like, you can come up with an infinite number of decimal numbers between, like, 0.1 and 0.2, and then you can come up with more infinite between 0.1 and 0.3.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think too much into that, because I mean, I'm sure there's more to it that I don't understand, but I think it's also just a result of the language that we built. What's more interesting to me is, like, the what you brought up about, like, the size of the universe and where it all comes from. I'm a believer in that, everything is just a smaller abstraction of something bigger. Just like
Horton Hears a Who.
Yeah, kind of, right? Horton Hears a Who. So the Big Bang and all of these major events we've studied, analyzed, and, like, interpreted to be the beginning of time or whatever, it might just be, the start of something minuscule in a bigger realm that we don't quite understand yet. So to make these judgment calls from our perspective is like that computer trying to compute random from what it has. And if it doesn't know anything about the world external to it, that computer thinks the beginning of the universe was, first time it was switched
turned on.
Yeah.
Damn.
So,
I like that thought.
Simulation theory, right?
Yeah. Do you believe in that?
The math checks out. So, like,
really?
I think, because it's the math. It's like stupid math. It's like, well, I mean, the probability of us being not in a simulation is lower than the probability of us being in. It's like, all right, well, fuck you.
Yeah, that is. I mean,
if it is true, like, then you get to the question. It brings back to that same question, like, well, what differentiates a simulation from real existence? What is real existence? And fortunately, we might never know that in our lifetimes. But
yeah, because there's just so much spiritual stuff, I'll call it, that is hard to turn away from. Like, all these near-death experiences of people, like, literally millions of these encounters, and that haven't even been in contact with each other, know nothing of what another person experienced. And I know it could have been your brain or some type of thing, but there's cases where their brain's been dead for like 15 minutes when they're going under surgery or something like that, or in a kayak accident. But they go somewhere through a tunnel. They're this energy form.
Oh, God.
And then they either see, like, a family, or they talk to an angel or some shit like that. Like, I was just moving a lady out of her house, and she was telling me about how she almost died.
Right.
And she was dead.
Oh, my God.
Out of her out of body, a white ball energy thing. And these angels, she called them, which were just brighter.
Yeah.
I don't know how she knew that they were, but she was like, they told her, like, telepathically or whatever, just, I don't know, because your energy.
Yeah.
They're like, if we're here for you, but we can't help unless you accept God's will. Like, we're not helping you. It kind of reminds me of, like, a vampire. Like, he he can't come in unless you invite him.
Right.
So she's like, you can help.
Yeah.
And then like her blood level went down. She
got
calmed out, and then she lived, which is crazy. And there's just so many of these. And just, I don't know if you believe in like another, it's not even like, I talked to my priest. I'm like, is it a dimensional thing? He's like, no.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not that. I'm like, then what the fuck is it? You know, what do you think about that kind of stuff?
So I think the religion and you know, this whole, I guess, like story and universe of God and angels that we built is rationalization for phenomena we can't explain.
That makes that.
And there's truth in that, right? So, like, if we see like a UFO, like you talked about the UFO things, you know, if we see or we get data that suggests something outside of the realm of, you know, possibility that we are comfortable with in our known universe, we have to associate some symbol or some entity with that like unacceptable data that we just got.
Yeah.
So in like the prehistoric times or whatever, if supernatural occurrences began, you know, to happen in front of them, like a man walking on water or whatever it be,
or like lightning.
Yeah, lightning.
It's like Zeus.
Yeah,
it's a god.
And they you have to rationalize it somehow. So I think it's symbolic of real greater powers we don't understand.
Yeah.
But I am under the belief that like a majority of the you know, the history we created around it was just that, created.
Yeah,
by us.
I always think the Bible is a children's book.
Yeah.
Because like you're not, if I'm explaining, I don't know why the Punic Wars came to my head, or that's so random.
Okay.
I was thinking about like pregnancy also. Just like if you're explaining like sex to a kid, you're not gonna give him the actual thing. You're gonna give him what he can understand. Like, oh, when two people love each other.
Yeah, yeah.
That was probably not a great example.
No, I'll
stick with the children's book.
Yeah.
Trying to explain something greater. So how would you go about things that are out of our understanding? How do we even approach something that we don't understand?
Man, I mean, the way we've done it is like we just said, you know, you try to pair it to the closest thing.
Do you think that's a good approach now?
As long as you remember, right? As long as you remember that that's exactly what you're doing. And at all times you have to assume everything you've assumed previously could be totally false.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you keep like your frame of reference for like, you know, all the operating principles that we know might be totally false. When you're operating in a space where you don't know much about it, you know, I think that's important to remember. So, like for example, the first time someone, when they were trying to fly a plane, right? If they, you know, came up with a design that they thought was going to work on paper, and it didn't work the first 10, 20 times, if they never thought that they were wrong, you know, they never would have made the plane work. So I think it's just important to have, like scale, right? You got to understand like how much you really know and how much you think you know.
Yeah, that is very important. There's this book called The Power of Now,
Really?
which is a great thinking book. And he was talking about how the first step for us to be present in the present moment is we have to detach ourselves from our thoughts. Like our thoughts are not us.
Yeah.
Like that's the first step, because if I attacked one of your thought, like one of something you said or your thoughts, you're going to get defensive because you think it's you, that I'm attacking you, when in reality, we're attacking what we think, our ego, and our ego wants to stay alive no matter what. And I think that needs to be taught in school, because we see the consequences of people being
attacked for their thoughts.
Yeah, in today's society. But
do you? Okay, I mean,
go there.
Go there. Go where?
Do it.
I don't know. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I don't know. It seemed like something went in your mind, and I want you to say it.
I was gonna like totally 180 pivot the conversation.
I'm okay with it.
All right. Well, which direction do we want to go?
Where do you want to go?
I was just like gonna bring back to Earth because I'm getting lost in
space fair.
Talk.
I get spacey.
What's like one of your biggest concerns, I guess, for yourself in the next 10 years? Like, what's something you think will be a really challenging part of your life, whether personally or like bigger scale?
Definitely gonna get canceled for something I say.
Yeah,
like
you put a lot of stuff out there.
Definitely nervous about legal stuff.
Legal stuff?
If I say something that can incriminate me.
Okay.
There's a very good chance that I don't make it at all, which is a very, very real possibility.
Dude, I'm interrupting you now because you know Tucker Ward, yeah?
Yeah, I love Tucker.
We're best friends.
Yeah.
We always talk about most kids, like in our positions, fortunate enough to get into, afford, and hopefully graduate from almost any college, right? Can expect some level of opportunity in the form of like a salary job out of school. Like, I mean, maybe some might get unfortunate and not be able to get any kind of job, but most of us are fortunate enough to have that as an option, regardless of the level of compensation. Like that's almost always an option, is like a salary-based job. And it's kind of, I think, and Tucker kind of agrees with me on like, it's a bit of a drug, right? Like salary and a stable job is an option.
It's a trap.
Yeah. And if you're not working on your own dreams, you're working on someone else's, right?
Exactly.
So like I've had these thoughts too. By the way, I don't know if I told you, but I'm graduating this May.
Beast.
Yeah. No, it's scary though. Cause like I talked to my dad and I came home for summer. He's like, so like, what are you doing next summer? And I'm like, oh my God, that's life, you know?
Yeah.
And it's easy to build that path in your head of, oh, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to get this job, I'm going to make this much, eventually move to this job, make this much. And that's amazing. Like, it's amazing that opportunity exists for plenty of people who need it and will do incredibly well with it. But then, you know, there's that like thirst and that hunger to build something like risky and do something different other than a job. And like going after that at this point in your life is the best thing you can do. Because if you don't, like we talked about with investing, right? You never get back that risk. You never get back that ability to take these risks. I always am under the like operating principle that anyone can make it in any industry if they have like the ability to know when they're being stupid and recognize mistakes they've made, and the discipline to keep going. Yeah. Like I talk pretty frequently actually with people that work for Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, all the Elon companies, and in their hiring, what they really are looking for is not necessarily, I mean, they attract the smartest people in the world, but more so they want people with like incredible grit. Like not just, oh, this problem was really hard and then I kept working on it and then I got the answer. It's like, no, like this is something no one has ever done before. We don't even know if it is possible. It's not a ridiculous assumption to assume that it's impossible, but you need to like power through unmeasurable amounts of difficulty to accomplish something that no one's ever done before. Yeah. That's like grit. And that I think is like a distinguishing factor between successful and not successful.
Yeah, you need grit and drive. And there's this cool thing I was looking at from this, I think it was Asian philosopher, I think it was China, but it's this 4-circle Venn diagram, right? And the top left circle is all about like finding your purpose in life. So the top circle is what makes you happy, what do you love, what are you good at, and what will make you money.
And the intersection is
that's
small.
What you should do.
Yeah.
But it's because if you have what you love and you're not good at it, well, then you're gonna quit. Yep. And if you have, and you can do a combination of all of them.
That's a great Venn diagram. I love that. Yeah.
Thank you, philosopher thinkers. But it's so true. And that's why I've learned from a young age, like, I don't give a shit if I make a lot of money. Yeah. We're here for 80 years if we're lucky. I'm going to do what I enjoy. Yeah. So if I enjoy sitting down, talking with someone, I'm going to do that. And I'm just going with life. Like, I'll see where it takes me. And fear of the future, that is a trap. And the anxieties of the past, another trap. Like, the present is the only time we have, and I want to enjoy it. So that's what I'm going to do. And we'll see if it works out.
Yeah, dude, I had like an interesting year. I was alone for like really like just like by myself for a huge majority of the past calendar year. I took an RA job, right? And did it for the free housing trying to be efficient, right? Get out in 3 years,
Yeah.
get free housing, try to make the school as cheap as possible. And was like, with COVID, every single one of my classes was online. I had 3 jobs that were totally online.
That's brutal.
And I just never, like, barely left my room except for food in the gym. And the food was downstairs and the gym was across the street. So it's like not that much movement.
Yeah.
On the weekends, I'd like go see friends off campus and stuff.
Yeah.
But it like kind of like made me start looking, because I had like Instagram and Snapchat, and I'd see people having like the normal college experiences and stuff, and I love having fun, right? Like I'm not like a boring nerd who doesn't like go out and stuff, but it also like kind of made me realize how much time I waste and still do looking at other people like having fun, and looking at other people like pretending to have fun probably. So
it's a big part of social media.
So I deleted Instagram and Snapchat like 2 months ago.
That's a move.
I got Snapchat back, but like only for my family. My family has a family group chat on Snap that I was missing out on.
Yeah.
So I don't snap anyone. I try not to look at stories, but I think not. And another thing I realized is like I hate when I tell people like plans on like, oh, I want to do this, and like then it makes it seem like I'm like trying to skip steps, because your work should speak for itself, and if you start speaking before the work is done, it's like you're skipping steps on that journey.
I feel that.
Yeah.
That's why I like was very hesitant to tell anyone about this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because
it's nervous.
It is nervous because you don't want people to be like, you suck, or like you're not gonna.
Right.
But it's just a part of it, and my like. For taking risk, like my advice always is just fucking go for it.
Yeah.
If you love something, dude, do it, because that love, no matter how hard it's gonna get, that will keep you going. It really will, and it's so worth it. Because I don't want to be sitting on my deathbed thinking, "Fuck, I wish I did this."
Yeah. I mean, so if I can ask you, like, do you have any short-term plans for this specific podcast? Like things you want to change, things you want to do better?
I always want to get better.
Right.
Like my conversations, I'm working on it right now. I used to say in my past podcasts, like and a lot as filler words.
Yeah.
And that pisses me off. So I do a lot of run-on sentences. So I've been trying to, instead of saying like and I pause.
Right.
I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I just released some clothes, which is cool. Like merch.
No way.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, I did. Which also makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like, dude, I don't want to like try to sell this. But I don't know if you know Tasso, and like a few of my friends are like, you should make some merch.
Yeah, you really should.
And then I did, and it's kind of cool.
All right. Talk about like YouTube for a bit. So I avid YouTube watcher. Like I watch so much. That's the one I should have really deleted, is YouTube. But my issue is like so many of these social networks, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, have like good purposes. Like I wish I could have kept, this is a problem with me, honestly, not with the platforms, but the design of the platforms incentivizes this problem. Like I wish I was strong enough to keep Instagram on my phone and only like look at my friends and like people I really care about, like what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I'm not like strong enough to do that. Like I'm so susceptible to Instagram Reels or like stuff like that, and I'll get caught in it. So I have to take steps to like distance myself from it. YouTube, similar thing. There's some really freaking awesome creators that like create really educational stuff that I love watching. And the problem is like in the gap time between their uploads, I will fill that so quickly with dumb stuff. Like dumb stuff I just don't need to be wasting time on. But I was gonna segue into like I always thought like maybe I could try making a couple YouTube videos, and I've done like a couple.
I saw you at a channel.
Yeah, I do have a couple, and it's a ton of work, man. Like
people don't realize.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah, and it's like a real lot, and I got nervous making a couple videos.
Yeah,
and it's not even like I'm doing nearly as much as what you're putting out there.
But I'll give you the advice Rogan. I listen to Rogan saying it's like it's a post and dump, or dump and I don't know. You just post and you don't look.
Right. Oh, post and ghost.
Post and ghost.
I literally heard it this morning.
Yeah, post and ghost. You can't be caught up with. I had a problem with this at the beginning. I was caught up with the numbers. I'm like, why did so many people watch this or that?
Yeah.
It's a trap. you have to keep yourself rooted, and I'm doing this because I enjoy it. And when you're not, stop. Like, you can't look at something and be like, look for others to validate you.
Yeah.
You need to find the validation in yourself, because that is a strong rooted tree, while looking for others for validation in anything, even with social media, saying, I'm comparing myself to you. That is no way to live a life. Like, we need to find that within ourselves. And it sounds cheesy to say, but it really does come with just knowing who you are, knowing your value, knowing your worth. And it takes time and practice.
All right. So I get the not looking at the numbers thing, but do you internally have like goals that like you want to hit?
I mean, I'm okay. I have some plans for school. I want to start interviewing a lot more professors, a lot more people that know a shit ton more than me. Because that was my whole goal of this. Like, sitting down with you is amazing. Because I am learning so much from you.
Coming on.
Yeah, you're a beast.
I want to come back.
Dude, I'm definitely having you back. But I really want to do that. I might get a guy who's running for governor to come on.
Yeah.
Which would be cool.
New Jersey?
Yeah.
Sing?
Yeah.
Rizzo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is he the one whose daughter is married to Zach Wheeler?
I don't know. But his sister's daughter went to my school, and she reached out to me.
Did they live in Chester?
Yeah, but they went to Maubert.
Yeah, I know. So do you know, like, you ever heard of Dominique Rizzo?
Oh shit, is that family?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and she's now Dominique Wheeler, married to like the Mets pitcher.
Oh yeah,
I think it's the same family.
No, I think it probably is.
You know, well, anyway.
Yeah, but so I'm trying to do that, and like, I don't know where it's gonna lead, but eventually I'm gonna start having because like right now it's not monetized.
Yeah.
I turned it off because I don't want to be making people see ads
On YouTube?
Yeah, or on everything, Spotify, all that shit.
Oh wow. So YouTube, you probably didn't have it yet, right?
What?
Like monetization?
Yeah. Yeah, but Spotify and those I could turn it on.
Turn on. Wow, I didn't realize.
But I turn it off because I'm like, I don't want people.
Right.
So eventually I'm gonna need source of income. So maybe some like advertising.
Well, yeah. I mean, you use this time to grow. I mean,
that's my whole thing.
Yeah, there's no shame in paying yourself for what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
Man.
So I'm taking time, and that's honestly each time I put out a podcast, I really don't expect anyone to listen to all of them because that's ridiculous.
Yeah, they're long.
Yeah, they are. They're so long.
You know, it's crazy though. Sometimes you get invested in, like, people watch 3 hours of Joe Rogan. So there are people.
I do.
Yeah, I do too.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe eventually, like right now, I really want to grow my base. My goal is end of senior year, I'll have like a pretty sturdy base where when I post, like I could actually get like, because I had my Latin teacher on who was a genius,
Right.
but no one watched because no one knew him.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, one of the most difficult things for me when like trying to stalk and all the other podcasts you've done was I'd like click into one and I love how it just starts into conversation. And then I'd be like, I don't know anything about this person.
Yeah.
And like people watching this probably have no idea who the hell I am.
Yeah.
Like I think if you watch the full 2 hours, you probably got, or whatever it's been, you probably will get like, all right, he probably does computer science. He probably like knew James in high school. Like,
Yeah.
So
it is confusing. That's another thing I'm struggling like to figure out because right now it's the big base of people that watch are the other person's friends.
Really?
Like my mom doesn't even watch all of them.
Yeah. I mean,
so.
What's your biggest platform, if you don't mind me asking?
Probably, honestly, Instagram.
Instagram.
Definitely. The only time when people come up to me and say, I listen, it's like, I watch your Instagram reels.
You post clips on reels?
Yeah.
I was going to say, did you, like, YouTube and Instagram are both shoving reels and shorts down the throats of their users heavily. I
got to start, but it's hard for me now. 'Cause at school, I had a producer that would timestamp. This is when you change topics.
You had a guy that did that?
Yes, and it was awesome.
He did it for free?
Yeah, he was my boy, Clemens. Well, he gets to put it on his resume too.
Of course.
But like he was the man. He would say he's a smart kid. He would fact check everything.
That's amazing.
He was Jamie.
He
was literally Jamie. And he was awesome.
Gosh.
Now he's in California. And I would use that to be like, okay, we talk about this there. Right. But now it's me.
Yeah, it takes so long.
Fuck. Right. I have to go through the whole thing again to figure out when we talked about something.
So, yeah, every minute we talk is another minute I have to
go through. Yeah.
That's so funny.
But definitely Instagram because it's short, it's easy. People are scrolling on their phones anywhere. They just tap through. But if you're looking to start something, you got to post everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I'm on fucking 10 different platforms to
That's
be listened
insane.
to, and most of them no one listens to on.
Yeah, but you got to keep it
You
up.
gotta keep it
Yeah,
doing.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
man.
only 30. You're number 33.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, so what was that robots thing you're at?
All right. Robots thing. I think you're maybe talking about like the Boring Company.
The one you placed in and you made a robot?
Digging a tunnel. It's not really a robot, but so so basically,
I thought it was a robot.
for the people who have like interpreted, I might be like an Elon fanboy. You're not wrong, but I am. So all right. Let's start at the beginning. They last year, right, or 5 years ago, 5 years ago, Elon Musk published this white paper for Hyperloop, which was like that super fast train. Basically, it's just a train in a vacuum sealed tube. If it's a vacuum, there's no air in the way and the train can go a lot faster. That's Hyperloop. That was like 5 or 7 years ago. He published just a white paper that said this is how it would work. He then started this Hyperloop competition funded by SpaceX, where they, in Hawthorne, California, the SpaceX headquarters, they built a quarter-mile track. I think it was a quarter mile of, like, it's just a tunnel, and they can vacuum seal it. Like, they can take all the air out. And they started this student competition every year where students would first, like, submit designs for a Hyperloop pod. If they were picked, they'd qualify for the competition, go compete. And that's how they do their hiring, really. Like, the real point of it was to source talent for SpaceX, Tesla, all his companies. So that was like past 7 years. Last year, I joined a Hyperloop team at Virginia Tech doing that type of stuff. And it actually turned out, well, the competition didn't we did qualify, we did like build our pod, design it, and then the competition didn't happen, yes, because of COVID, but I don't think it was going to happen anyway. It seemed like SpaceX was done with it. They're not doing the competition, which kind of sucked. We spent a whole year.
That is kind of annoying.
And they didn't even tell us.
Yeah.
But, c'est la vie. And in June of last year, about a year ago exactly, they started this Boring Company competition. So the Boring Company is another Elon-funded company that seeks to solve the problem of soul-crushing traffic by
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, making transportation three-dimensional, not by going into the sky, but into the grounds. And what all they really do is basically what every Elon company does is make some sector more accessible, right? Electric cars became better, cheaper, faster, more reliable. Space travel, better, cheaper, faster, more reliable. And now tunnel boring hopefully will become better, cheaper, faster, and more reliable. So what the competition is basically anyone in the world could apply for, what is your design for a tunnel boring machine that can most efficiently dig a 100-meter tunnel from point A to point B as quick as possible and as accurate as possible. And you have to like reinforce it. Like you can't just dig a hole and hope that the dirt. Yeah. You have to like put concrete up and stuff. So it's about a foot and a half in diameter tunnel that we're digging. And our team actually qualified for the competition. There were like 392 applicants and 12 of them got qualified, and we were one of those 12. And now it's like a scramble to actually build it, because the qualification was like your design had to be thoroughly reviewed by the engineers at these companies, and now we're scrambling to try and build the thing. We still don't know exactly when or even where the competition is. We think end of this summer, but it's kind of like...
They haven't given you an end date?
Well, so there's like an NDA we had to sign, a non-disclosure agreement. So, then... What?
Nah, just NDAs.
Yeah, it's freaking weird.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so anyway, that's kind of the competition we're doing now, is digging tunnels.
That's sick.
Hopefully. Can
you talk about your idea?
Yeah. So ours is a really kind of unique design. So basically, like our machine, so the tunnel it digs is kind of like an angled tunnel. Like it's not just like straight into a wall.
Okay.
It's like a little down and then it comes up later. Our machine is so interesting in that it like digs about 4 feet in, like it digs in 4 feet, and then we put in a concrete segment behind the machine, And then we have these hydraulic arms that push that concrete segment, which pushes the machine, like kind of a chain effect. And then we back up the hydraulic arms, put in another concrete segment, push it all in, and it's like this continuously growing like tunnel that we just keep pushing really, really hard.
So as it digs, it puts concrete behind.
So the machine in the front, all does is dig and throw dirt through like
Where's the dirt go?
We have this. It's called an umbilical cord. Seriously, yeah, that comes from behind and comes all the way out of the machine. But the real power comes from these hydraulic arms on the ground that keep pushing these concrete segments in behind the machine, and that actually pushes the machine forward.
That's sick.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. And like, I'm a computer science kid. Like,
yeah.
I don't know shit about tunnels at all.
Yeah.
Most of the kids on our team are aerospace engineers, computer science, electrical engineering. And the really unique thing about like the competition and all of like these SpaceX competitions that they do is they just want to see, are you a good engineer, and like, can you solve really difficult problems? Like, they're never going to, probably not going to use our design for like commercial purposes. They want to source really good talent and see that you can like make it through very difficult situations.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel as if it is to solve problems like Walt Disney did a great job in this. Like, I love Disney.
He's a cool dude.
He is a great guy. He, instead of, when he was building Disneyland, instead of taking architects to build these structures, because what he imagined they couldn't build.
Yeah.
So he said, all right, fuck you. I'll get artists.
Yeah.
And the artists built it. So I really believe in sourcing different minds to work on problems, because if I'm an architect looking at this problem, I'm going to see the same shit. But when you get a different perspective, like you're talking about, if we have the same stuff, there's no creativity. You get a different look at it, seeing the same thing. It gives you a different idea.
Yeah.
So I really do think we have to take people from different fields and have them work together on big problems like this.
Yeah. People don't realize how valuable to companies like new talent in general is, regardless of the field. Bringing, like, if you have a team of people that has been working on, I don't know, like marketing Coca-Cola for the past 50 years, they've been doing a pretty good job, I'd say. Everybody knows what Coke is.
Yeah.
But you bring in like new blood, and they might just immediately recognize existing infrastructure within that team that, like, to everyone in the team has just been a part of life for 50 years.
Yeah.
This new blood comes in and can tell there's some inefficiencies here that like can be improved. And it's totally blinded to the people that have been surrounded by it for so long.
It's just so
so
normal.
used to it.
For rockets, I've been thinking about this. I really want to ask, because the combustion engine is just terrible.
Yeah.
Okay. Can they just get a big rubber band and just shoot it up?
Shoot it? Wow. So, I mean, I mean, like momentum would carry you pretty far.
And then they use a little blast off to get a little higher.
I mean, okay, so like when you're taking off from Earth, that's like the most difficult part.
So you're starting from nothing.
You're working against gravity the whole way until you sort of escape Earth's gravitational pull. Once you're in space, if you get momentum, you're going to keep it unless you hit something.
Mm-hmm.
Like going from here to Mars, you're not burning that much fuel between. Like you're just you're keeping that same speed because there's no air in your way. Yeah. But to land and take off from like a planet, that's where you're working against gravity. So like the rubber band, I mean, I guess if you can get a
big enough rubber band that launches so many tons.
I don't know.
That'd be so cool. I'm like, why don't they just use a fucking rubber band?
That would be pretty cool.
Right?
Yeah.
But back to the tunnel thing. I just wanted to ask about the rocket, because I was curious if that could actually work. Because I do think transportation is such a huge environmental problem for us. And if we have public transportation where everyone can get on, we would have way less pollution.
Yeah.
But would they use like magnets or some shit to push each other.
So the tunnels are just that, tunnels, and you can put whatever you want in them.
They don't have a plan for what's going in.
Well, so right now their first commercial project, the Boring Company, is a loop in Vegas. I think it's got like 4 stops, and it's tunnels between some of the major like hotels and convention centers.
That's so cool.
Vegas. Yeah, and right now, because it was like their first like proof of concept, they have Teslas driving people between them. Yeah.
That is all. I want to go to Vegas.
You can. Yeah, it's open to the public now, I think.
What? And
yeah, you can take a Tesla under Vegas and get anywhere pretty quick. Well, any of those 4 stops.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that cool, right? Like people are like, okay, I mean, this is just a tunnel. Like I drive through a tunnel going into New York, you know? So what's different is like the tunnels they build are really small. Like they just barely fit a car. Yeah. And the reason is like it's a lot cheaper to build a tunnel like that, and you don't need like the infrastructure like the big tunnels in New York have, which is ventilation for combustion engines. So you can only have like electric cars go through, because if you start spewing gas out in the tunnel, you know, someone lights a cigarette and
you're dead.
Or you just can't breathe also.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is one of those things where it's like it's a really cool like solution, or no, it's a really big problem, and the solution is less exciting than people think. Like it's just tunnels.
But it's so cool.
Yeah,
because we could free up so much space up on land.
Oh yeah,
if we just went under. But that would that like mess up with the ecosystem, like the worms and stuff down there, and I don't know what else is down there.
You can go really really deep.
Yeah.
Like before you. I don't know. You can go really deep, and you can go way deeper in Earth than you can build up.
That's good.
Yeah.
Let's go down.
Yeah. I mean, in New York, right, you have people working on the 90th or 120th floors, and yet there's only one level of ground transportation. So, well, I guess in New York you also have a subway, so maybe 2. And like the whole premise here is like we can scale that to have maybe 100 levels under the ground.
That'd be crazy, and each level goes to a different spot.
Yeah. I mean, you can. The possibilities are endless. It's just a matter of making it cheaper and more accessible, pushing the ball in the right direction, right? And
I like that.
That's kind of like all of what Elon's things do. You know, they're not the end solution. They're not like if you're someone who trusts that Tesla single-handedly will save us from global warming, you know, wishful thinking. They're moving the ball in the right direction though, and forcing big companies to make changes. Did you see the F-150 electric by chance?
Oh, was that the Ferrari?
No. So
I saw an electric Ferrari. I was like, that thing's sick.
Ford just came out with, so the number 1 best-selling car in, I think, the United States, period, has always, for the past 25 years, just been the Ford F-150. And now Ford just came out with the F-150 Lightning, which is all electric. And it's pretty sick.
Ka-chow.
Yeah, ka-chow.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. So I like that because I always like the metaphor, you can't get to the top of the stairs without taking each step. So yeah, they got to do that. But what are your steps looking like? What are you planning for the future?
Oh man, me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like
bringing
back to that like conversation about risk and stuff. You know, I'm a less risk focused person than like, I'm a little like risk adverse. I'd say probably more than most. And I want to first get done with my schooling and pay off my loans as quickly as possible. And at the time being, the probably best way to do that will be like a salary job.
Don't get stuck.
I know. That's what I'm really scared of, honestly. So I think like first year out, hopefully, unless I like fail some classes, will be this May, right? And I'm hoping to use my like quote unquote 1 year head start in just killing the loans. And if I can like get either loan free or very close to loan free after a year, that's a lot less burden or a lot less risk to take on by leaving a salary job, right? And talking to people who've done the normal, go to like a really big tech company and you know, they make great money and they have fun lives. The biggest thing that I've heard from them is the most like, I guess, soul crushing thing is they see people leave these giant tech companies and start something, and it pains them to see people succeed like after they've left, you know? So there is like value in joining a big company because it attracts so much talent, and you can meet people there that will then help you, you know, get to that next step and take that leap. So, you know, hopefully not getting stuck in the trap of salary. Probably pit stop there. But I think there is tremendous growth potential in the decentralized space. The issue is it's so hard to learn about, and you're not getting a job working for, you know, Ethereum, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're building something on your own and hoping people find value in it. And it's really freaking hard to do it. And no one's going to support you, and you're battling the biggest companies in the world, you know?
But that's nothing great happens without risk.
Yeah.
Or challenge. But that's another thing. Like, damn it, like.
-1.
Yeah, -2. I did it again with the But there are these speakers that come to our school and talks with either Newhouse kids or even like Whitman
Business school.
Business School.
Okay.
And I've listened because my friends are in Whitman, so when we're doing work, they have it on.
Oh, that's cool.
Listening, because we all do work in literally one room, because our house doesn't have Wi-Fi, so we go across the street. It sucks.
You don't have Wi-Fi in your house.
Don't even get me fucking started. I can't even open Spotify on my Xbox.
Wait, like no Wi-Fi at all?
No. And I did online school the entire year. There is Wi-Fi. It's just, we call it, it's Maharfi, our chef. It's trash, because food shit too. But
is it a campus?
No, it's a fraternity house.
Okay, so it's off campus?
It's on campus, but it's off campus.
Yeah, but it's like it's your own. Like, you have a landlord.
Our nationals owns it.
Right. You can't get your own.
Oh, we've talked to them.
And they just.
They're like, this is the topic in me. Like, we can't even go on anything.
Do you know, is it the Wi-Fi that's the issue, or is it
I think it's
the internet speed that you're getting to the house? Because, like,
dude.
Yeah, okay.
I don't fucking know.
Sorry. That's catastrophic.
Yeah, it sucks. It really sucks. But what they were saying, these speakers, was that the first 10 years, you're not going to make any money.
Yeah.
Like, don't even focus on that.
Jeez.
Because this is the time. I had a speaker come in and talk to us about pigeonholing ourselves, because I take writing classes. So if you write a script that's a comedy and it's funny, well, then and it's successful, then you're the comedy guy. Yeah. Then you only write this type of stuff, and you can't do that.
Pigeonhole.
You can't, because that's a real thing, and people do it. People get stuck at these jobs, these organizations, and I really believe you just gotta fucking obviously pay your shit. That's important, but find if there is a way where you can work on what you're doing while making money too. Like, if you have this job and on the side, like, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a grind to do
more, man. You always do more, right? Like,
you could always do more.
I've talked to like my parents about this and stuff, and it's like, you know, there's routes you can take. You know, if you want to go all in on something, quit the salary job and try doing this full time, or, you know, work 8 hours a day at the salary job, and then work 8 hours at night on your personal thing, and then maybe make the personal thing 12 hours, and you only sleep 6 hours, and or 4, sorry. But there's only so many hours in the day, so at a certain point, a decision needs to be made, and that's where like the risk, I think, will come in. Have you ever heard of FIRE movement? This is all right.
I've not.
So FIRE is like this acronym that stands for Financially Independent, Retire Early, and it's a thing that I think more people should learn about. I don't entirely encourage everyone to do it. It's not for everyone. In fact, I don't even think it's for me. But it's basically this movement of being very, very financially conservative in your younger years, like between now and 34, around that age. If almost with reason, almost regardless of whatever amount you're making, there's math that can be done to show that feasibly almost anyone could retire by like 34 and never work again.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, like, within reason. So it does require you to live like a very frugal lifestyle. Like, basically, like, most people, when they get their first job, they'll take like maybe 6% 401k out of their salary to put towards a 401k, and the company usually matches that. And for most people, like, that's it. Like, that's what they do for their investing, and that's great. Like, fucking do that. That's probably the best investment you can make when a company matches 401k, that's free money. But people that like subscribe to the FIRE movement kind of almost do the opposite, where like, if they're making this much, they'll keep maybe 6% of that in cash, or like maybe even less. And then the rest, they just dump into investments, like very, very broad index funds that sort of track the whole market, And, historically, you can expect anywhere between, on the lowest end, maybe 6% to like 14% on the high end returns annually on those. And the rule kind of is, if you get to a point where the sum of your investments, if you can get to a point where you can live off of 4% of the sum of your investments, then your money will grow at a rate faster than you can spend it. Like if you're only spending 4%.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like infinite money, right?
That is.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good.
So my take on that, right? I think it's awesome for the people that really want to do that. And then like the real movement is retire early. So like these people will be straight up quitting their jobs at like 30, 34, and then, I don't know, living on the beach for 30, 40 years. Like, I'm not a huge fan of that. You go stir crazy if you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
But if it can really free up your mind and free up like your schedule, you can take a lot more risk if you're FIRE, right? Like if you're financially independent, where say like 4% of your net worth was a comfortable living, nothing crazy, no like giant house or anything. You could take some crazy risk, you quit your big job, go make a startup and totally flop, and you're still chilling with that 4%.
Yeah. That seems more fun to me.
That would be a fun place to get to. Yeah. And it's not super easy, right? Like,
no. But money makes money.
Yeah.
Once you have, once you have a good amount of money, it's way easier to make money than if you have nothing.
Oh, yeah. Without doubt.
But it's just getting there.
Yeah.
It's the hard part. And it does come with a grind for.
Act broke, stay rich, man.
Act broke, stay rich. I like that.
That's my thing.
That is a good thing, because people get very corrupted by money and power and cash. I don't really like that.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, and it's also people. I always call it like skipping steps. Like people love to, get like nice things before it's like due.
Yeah.
Even if you can afford the really nice thing, like, well, what if you don't buy it? You can invest that money and you'll be fine without the really nice thing for now.
Yeah.
And it'll do you better in the long term.
It's all about long term.
I'm very hypocritical because I just had a pretty awesome trip with my girlfriend. You
still have to enjoy life though.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And there's plenty of ways to enjoy it without spending money. I always argue, and she argues the opposite, right? So we meet in the middle there.
You gotta, like we were saying, it's the balance. You gotta find your balance, and everyone's balance is different. That's another thing.
I know
that a lot of people don't realize, because they look at Elon, they're like, "How do you do this? You do so much." But he has a balance. But he was on Rogan. He was losing his mind.
Musk?
Oh yeah. Dude,
I've seen him
on his third one.
Which one? What part? I've seen them all.
It was at the end when Joe was literally asking. He was like, "Are you gonna do planes next?" And Musk was like, "I can't."
Yeah.
You could literally see
right
him breaking, because he does so much, but it takes a toll on you too.
Yeah.
People don't understand that he's human.
My dad and I have talked about this. Like, we talked about this like 6 months ago, right? And we were talking about how there's almost no real heroes in this world. And like people that a lot of people look up to also do some terrible stuff. I'm going to give one example, which a lot of people probably can disagree with. Like, I love and am incredibly mournful of Kobe Bryant. Like, I think he was an amazing workhorse, like brilliant basketball player, did some amazing things for his community, and won an Oscar, right? I think he won an Oscar for.
I have no clue.
Like, it was like, I don't know. He won.
He probably did.
Like, he's an amazing guy, right? And people forget, like, he like pleaded guilty to like sexual assault and like cheated on his wife all through like several years of basketball and stuff. So not everyone who does amazing things and is like this amazing role model is the best person all around.
Yeah.
So we were like trying to think 6 months ago, who's someone that's like still pretty good, and we thought of being like tech people. We were like, well, Bill Gates is a good guy, and then
Epstein.
Like, in the past month, our one hero has fallen from his.
And your parents were concerned, and my mom asked, "Why is this thing called bad role models?" That's
they're
literally
all
the
bad.
exact
Oh my.
reason. Is because there's literally not one person in this world that you can look at and
Say
take
is
all,
perfect, right?
because no one is. Everyone
is-
has mistakes.
I think symbolism is the most dangerous thing in like the political spectrum because people think if you support, one aspect of one person's being, like me supporting like Elon Musk in his like engineering endeavors, for some reason also signs my name on an agenda that says I don't believe in COVID because he said that one time. And it's like, you need to make very clear when you support someone nowadays that you support a specific aspect of
I
their
like
agenda.
Chick-fil-A. All the gay stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really agree
the
with.
Nuggets are great.
Nuggets are good, but that's why I believe in separating the art from the artist.
Yes. Yeah.
I like Michael Jackson's songs. Didn't really like how he
Right.
touched little boys.
Yeah, no. We didn't need that.
We didn't, but no one. That's the thing. No, everyone's gonna mess up. Everyone's gonna make
yeah.
mistake, and that's what we have to. Some are way bigger than others, but we have to recognize that as humans because that's what we are.
Do you have a favorite like living hero or like
Rogan.
Rogan? Yeah.
Like
I like him.
He's the man. I would say my favorite 3 people. I said it on another podcast. I could only think of 2, and I couldn't figure out my third. It would be Joe Rogan, Walt Disney, Jesus.
Jesus. Wow, man.
Those are my 3.
That's awesome.
What about you?
Oh, geez. Elon. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. I like Elon for his grit, really, like the determination. But like, I disagree with him on a lot of stuff. So you can call me a fanboy, but I'm not a blind supporter. Like I will openly disagree with some of his decisions. Besides him, and I think Edward Snowden's a pretty interesting dude, and that's a bold thing for me to say because now that signs my name on a bunch of stuff he's done that I probably don't even know about. But he took a bold step. Let's see, like honestly, LeBron James, just because of his willingness to, and he's not the only athlete that's done this, but like there's plenty of other examples. I just love this one specific instance where he was totally like insulted from a Fox News reporter who had this famous piece like "Shut Up and Dribble," where she did not want him or any other NBA athlete talking about politics. And then he, went to work and put the league on pause in the past year for the Black Lives Matter protests. And regardless of if you or anyone agrees with what he's standing for, he is taking a stand in one way or another and using his platform for something that he finds to be, worth his time and worth the energy. So I support anyone who can take a stand for something they believe in and make change.
A lot of people just follow.
Yeah.
Say, oh, that looks good. We'll hop on that train.
Probably one of those, honestly. But
Everyone is at a certain point. But what was I going to say? Oh, this is another topic that I just want to hear your thoughts about. All these hacks and like ransom things.
Like the pipeline.
The pipeline, and they just did another meat one.
Oh, geez.
What the fuck?
So ransomware. Yeah.
Ransomware
sucks.
They say from Russia. They make that explicitly clear. I don't know if that's just some propaganda that our news sources are throwing out, but it's always like Russia. But it's like allegedly Russia. So I'm like, is it really Russia who's doing this?
So ransomware is probably like, it might be from individual actors in Russia. But the way ransomware normally works is through human error. Like that's the way it happens is one individual, maybe like a secretary or an administrator or like, a ground floor worker will open an email on a computer on the company network that has like, it's normally not just like, I clicked the email and then it's there. Their security is better than that. It's like, I clicked this email and it looked like something from my company. So I gave it information, whether it be like a password or like a network password. I gave information to a source that was pretending to be a legitimate source. And now this malicious source has access to something it shouldn't. And it can basically gather vast amounts of data on the company network and encrypt it and basically say like, we're not going to give you this data back unless you pay our ransom. And it's like, well, you think they're going to pay? You think they're going to give you the data back if you pay? Maybe. Is it worth the risk of like paying this huge ransom? Also, like, what are we going to do without our, data? If we can't keep this gas pipeline working, states literally went without gas. I was in Virginia, and my friend could not get home. Tucker could not get home one morning. It wasn't that bad. Luckily, it ended like 4 days after. But
Yeah.
um,
That's kind of fucked up. Dude, it's literally, that's why you can never negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah.
Like it is, I feel like a source of terrorism in that,
No,
because
absolutely.
even if you give them the money, like you said, they're not going
You
to give
don't
it
know.
back.
Yeah.
So that's why you never do. You just got to stay strong and figure out another way around it.
yeah, ransomware is really dangerous just because of how easy it is for people to fall victim to that.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people need to get educated in just basic like cybersecurity, simple things like password managers. Do you have a password manager?
No.
You're a terrible person.
Should
I'm
I?
just kidding. It's both convenient and
What is it?
it's so there's plenty of different ones you can use. There's ones built into Google Chrome. There's ones built into Safari, and then you can get like third-party ones like LastPass, or I use Bitwarden. That's a good one because it's free. But all they do is make it easier for you to use really long, complicated passwords. Because like you'll go to a website to sign up, and you'll click your little Bitwarden plugin, and it'll generate the password for you, make it really long, complicated, and you never have to remember that.
And it's just in Bitwarden locker,
yeah.
safe place.
Yeah. And then everybody will always ask, well, what about Bitwarden? What if they get hacked? Then they have every one of your passwords. And that's true. And there's like totally open source password managers for really techie people who want to be super, super secure. For most people, if you're like comfortable signing off blindly that like other people have done the due diligence on Bitwarden to say that they're doing the right thing, then that's probably your best bet. Just trusting in the inspections of plenty of other people.
You gotta have some trust somewhere.
Yeah.
I just got hacked. My Activision.
No way.
Yeah, it sucks.
Like the Call of Duty thing.
Yeah, they literally, I just got an email. It's like, your email's been changed, and then it was like,
fuck.
your account has been like unlinked. I'm like, fuck. So I went on. It was like nothing. I sent them a support email. I'm like, damn it. Maybe my password should be a little more difficult to get.
So what normally happens with passwords is when you type in your password to like make your Activision account, Activision encrypts that password, kind of just like the hashing we talked about with blockchains, and they do math to it where it converts like, I love James, because that's probably your password.
It is.
The whole podcast just gets hacked.
Like, damn it. Fuck. Need to change the password.
Change it. It'll convert that string "I love James" into like that really long, hexadecimal long, whatever, random numbers and letters, and it stores that on the Activision servers. And there's no way for anyone to take that long random string and convert it back to "I love James." It's like impossible. But when you're trying your password, what they do is they'll do the hash and see if it matches the encrypted one. But what happens with like password breaches or like giant password hacks is usually like smaller companies will have a hack where that list of encrypted passwords gets leaked. And now these hackers have this giant database of encrypted passwords, and there's no way for them to turn those encrypted passwords back into the original. So they don't immediately have access to any accounts when they get that list of passwords. But what they'll do is they can like try random passwords, encrypt it, and see if it matches any. So the simplest passwords are the most vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Like password, right? That's the most common password on the planet is password. So they'll try password, and immediately like probably half the list lights up. It's like, yep, all these people had that. And then they're smarter than that now, though. They know a lot of people like to do like, J @M3S or something like that for James. And all the hackers know that. So they go through the most common logical steps that humans do. Best thing you can do as a person is, one, I would recommend a password manager. If not, use passphrases. So like write out like a sentence, like I really like to go to the beach or something like that. It's a lot longer, and the probabilities just add up. It makes it less likely you're gonna get hit by one of those like.
Yeah, and I feel like that's easier to remember too.
Yeah, it's a little easier.
Yeah,
but probably the best thing for most people would be a password manager. 2-factor authentication, can't stress it enough. Really, really important. For any account that offers it, you should use it. And if possible, don't use SMS, like don't use text message, because that's pretty vulnerable.
Fucking Android chumps.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I mean, like, think about even for yourself. Like, I bet your bank probably sends you a text if you want to log in.
They do.
And it's probably a text. It's not an iMessage. Yeah, so. No, but, like, you ever had, I don't know, like, Duo Mobile or, like, any authenticator app, like, for your school when you log in? Is there a two-factor thing?
Yeah, I always get texted.
Is it text?
Yeah.
Oh, Syracuse, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
No.
Chumps.
Yeah.
Microsoft does it too.
But it's a text?
Yeah.
Really?
It's like type in this code. It's like, don't send it. I literally just got one for setting up like the clothing. It was because he was sitting here, so I put it over here. My brother did it. And it sent me a text. And I'm like, it's like, don't give to anyone.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wasn't planning on it.
It's better than nothing, but SMS is pretty vulnerable. So things like Duo or like specific apps that, you know, will send like a notification are a little bit better.
Yeah.
And all of these are just steps to protect yourself online.
Got to protect ourselves. And that's such a rising business, I feel like.
Yeah.
We got to catch up with that stuff. But so where can you got to make this YouTube channel? Where can people find it? I don't care.
So I am on YouTube, Kyle Papili.
Nice.
And I got 713 subs right now.
Hey.
Yeah. But I haven't done much in the past like year, just because school and excuses of me being lazy.
They're like assholes.
What?
Everyone's got them.
Oh, excuses.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah. Plenty of excuses for me. And I get awkward, man, trying to make these videos. Like, it's easy for me to like talk to you about this stuff, but if I try to talk to a camera, I'm like, yeah.
Don't even like recognize the cameras.
I know.
Like, you honestly, the more you do, the more you get better. It's like anything.
Yeah.
You're just learning.
Yeah.
First ones will be awkward, but that's why not a lot of people watch at the beginning. And then when you get better and you're consistently better, it's just worth it.
Have you heard of Tesla tequila?
Is that the tequila he's making and selling for a shit ton? Oh, you were telling me about that.
Yeah.
Yes, or someone was telling me you were doing that. Or
So,
maybe I don't know.
Yeah, so that was like one of the semi-successful projects on my YouTube was so it went on sale super briefly in like September or October of this year. Tesla tequila. It's this really badass looking bottle of tequila. And it's $250 from Tesla. And it was only available for like a couple minutes and it sold out. And I was like, well, shit, I missed my chance to get it. And he tweeted, more is coming soon. So I was like, all right, I got a chance. So I wrote like a program that constantly checks their website to see if it comes in stock and was like, you know, this is going to alert me and then I'll be able to buy my tequila. But then like the financially conscious side of me is like, Kyle, like, do you really want to spend $250 on a bottle of tequila? And I was like, no, I want to buy 3 of them and spend $750.
Yeah.
And so I had to rationalize it somehow. So I made a YouTube video explaining the program, and I launched like a Tesla tequila notification service.
Yeah.
Where you could pay $5 one-time fee, and you join this Slack group just to get notified when it came in. And slowly, people just found it and started trickling into the Slack group. And then one day, it was like worst time. I was like in the middle of a Zoom call and like working too. Like I had like a job that I was already double dipping for because I was on a Zoom call. And then like phones just blowing up and I was like, this is game time. So I got on and I got mine and everybody in the group got theirs. And it was like,
that's huge.
Freaking awesome.
That's awesome.
And then after that, it sold out within like 10 minutes. And then a ton more people bought the service like right after. So...
for the next time?
Hey, I mean, I don't think there's going to be a next time, but nobody knows. So
yeah, they might do another one.
Yeah.
That's really cool. People are interested in this stuff. That's what I'm saying.
Well, the crazy thing is like now they're selling for, depending on where, it really depends on like your region, but like you could find someone to buy it for like $1,000, empty bottle.
Really?
Yeah.
An empty bottle.
Because you can't ship the alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
But so a $250 bottle, maybe now $1,000.
That's crazy.
I have
so
no plans on.
Yeah, you keep yours.
I'm keeping them all.
Yeah.
But I want to make I just made a YouTube short yesterday.
Yeah.
I did. And it was like that. I kind of explained it.
Yeah.
Like the whole story. And then I showed my bottle. And I actually have 5. So
that's electric.
But only 3 of them are mine.
Yeah.
the other two was like a friend who needed somewhere to ship it, and then my brother.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Dude, you got to keep doing it. If you need help with like editing or video stuff.
I just need help getting comfy in front of the camera, man.
I can also help you with, I don't know if I can help you with
Just
that.
stare at me.
Just,
when I'm talking.
just stare
Yeah.
the entire time. No, you just get so used to it.
Yeah.
It's just a practice thing.
Of course. And if you like ever want to do like, I don't know, like a website or something like that, I don't know.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I like it. But I've had a lot of fun today. I feel
Yeah.
like I've learned so much.
This was awesome, dude. I'm
So I appreciate
glad.
you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me,
No
man.
problem. Do you want to give any, other than Kyle Papili, any
Man.
other, if people want to reach out to you to give you a job after hearing this?
Yeah, I mean, you'll just Google Kyle, Papili. I'll
And you'll
come up
find
on
him.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
You get some cool stuff on there. I
Yeah.
do like that. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Awesome.
It's been fun.
Thanks,
All right.
James.
Peace.
Peace.
Good time.
Holy crap.